Cheryl Holt knew the store had been sold when her key stopped halfway into the front lock. She stood at 214 West Minor Street with one hand on the glass door and the other holding a canvas overnight bag against her hip. The morning was cold for late spring in Eureka. A paper sign inside the window said, "Closed for renovation." Behind it, the shelves had been stripped bare. 6 weeks earlier, Holt Family Market had still sold canned soup, laundry soap, sandwich meat, and the cinnamon rolls Cheryl baked on Friday mornings. Now, the front counter was gone. Pale squares marked the floor where the produce bins had stood. Even the red open sign Donald had hung in the window years ago had disappeared. Cheryl tried the key again. It didn't fit because someone had changed the lock. Her chest tightened. It wasn't the sharp pain the surgeon had warned her about, but she stood still until it passed. She had learned not to argue with her body. Her left hand rested over the front of her coat, above the healing line beneath her blouse. A white paper had been taped beside the door. It carried the name Sutton Development and a phone number. Under that, in smaller print, it said that all deliveries should use the rear entrance. Cheryl set down her bag and called Lauren. Her daughter answered on the fourth ring. "You're there already?" Cheryl looked through the glass again. "Where else would I be? I thought Wanda was bringing you after lunch. She had an appointment. She dropped me at the corner." There was a pause. Lauren had always used silence when she wanted the other person to fill it for her. Cheryl had spent years doing exactly that. She didn't now. Lauren sighed. "All right. Stay where you are. I'm 10 minutes away. You sold it. We'll talk when I get there." The call ended. Cheryl put the phone in her coat pocket. A delivery truck rolled past, its tires hissing on damp pavement. Across the street, a man carried a tray of coffee cups into an insurance office. He glanced at Cheryl, then at the sign, and looked away quickly. People in a small town tried not to stare. They usually saw everything anyway. Cheryl picked up her bag and walked around the building. The alley behind the market was narrower than she remembered. 2 green trash containers blocked part of the loading area. A chain had been looped through the handles of the upper loading door. Beside it, concrete steps led down to the basement entrance. Rainwater had collected in the lowest corner. There were 2 metal meter boxes on the rear wall. One looked new, the other had a cloudy glass cover and a faded strip of masking tape stuck beneath it. Cheryl didn't go closer. She was looking at the basement door. A ring of keys hung from a nail beside it. Not her keys. Someone had left them there, as if the room below held nothing worth stealing. She heard Lauren's car before she saw it. Her daughter turned into the alley too quickly, braked near the trash containers, and sat behind the wheel for a moment. Lauren was 39, though that morning she wore the nervous, irritated expression she'd had whenever Donald caught her hiding a bad report card. She got out carrying a leather folder. "You shouldn't be lifting that bag," she said. "You shouldn't have sold the store without telling me." Lauren closed the car door. "I told you we had an offer. You said you were considering one." "I was." Then it became time-sensitive. "While I was having heart surgery? That's not fair." Cheryl watched her daughter come closer. Lauren's hair had been freshly cut, and she wore black trousers with flat shoes, clothes chosen for a meeting. She had known exactly what kind of morning this would be. "What did you sell?" Cheryl asked. "The retail unit, the market, the street-level unit, Mom, the one Dad left me." Donald had died 2 years earlier. His will had given Lauren the store upstairs, along with its fixtures and remaining stock. Cheryl had understood that much. She had continued doing the books because Lauren said she needed help, and because closing the ledger each evening still felt like setting a plate for Donald. "You closed it before I came home," Cheryl said. "We were losing money. I know what we were losing. Then you know why I had to do it. I know the wholesaler was extending us 30 days. I know the property tax was paid. I know you postponed the freezer repair because you wanted the year-end numbers to look worse." Lauren's face changed. That was Cheryl's first small certainty of the day. Lauren hadn't expected her mother to remember the accounts from a recovery bed in Wanda's spare room. She had assumed surgery had made Cheryl vague, or tired, or willing to be managed. Lauren looked toward the street. "Nathan's putting real money into this place." "Nathan Sutton? He bought the unit. He wants to renovate right away." "How much?" "That's private. It wasn't private when I kept the books. You weren't an owner upstairs." The words landed between them. Lauren regretted them at once, but regret didn't make her take them back. Cheryl bent and picked up her bag. Lauren reached for it. Cheryl moved it out of her reach. "What's in the folder?" she asked. "Just clean up paperwork. Show me." Lauren opened it against the hood of her car. The first page carried a printed description of the building, followed by several paragraphs Cheryl couldn't read without her glasses. Lauren turned to the last page and pointed to a blank signature line. "It's a quitclaim," she said. "Nathan's lender wants everything clean before work starts." "What am I quitting?" "Any old interest connected to Dad. Utility access, storage use, whatever might still show under your name." Cheryl put on her glasses. They were inexpensive reading glasses from the drugstore, the pair Wanda had found beside Cheryl's hospital bed. Cheryl read from the top. The paper referred to all interests she might hold at the West Minor Street address. "This doesn't say storage," she said. "It's standard language. It says the entire property. It clears the title." "Then why didn't it get cleared before the sale?" Lauren pressed her lips together. She had an answer ready, but it wasn't a truthful one, and Cheryl could see her choosing whether to use it. Finally, Lauren said, "Because the basement wasn't included in the appraisal." "Why not? It's a liability." "What kind of liability?" "Water damage, old wiring, possible mold." "Nathan's contractor thinks it could cost $18,000 just to clean out." "Then why does Nathan need my signature? So he can deal with it." Cheryl looked past her daughter at the concrete steps. The basement had been neglected since Donald became ill. Before that, it held extra freezers, seasonal stock, an appliance bench, and a caretaker room with a hot plate and a narrow shower. Donald used to call it the working half of the building. Lauren called it storage because storage was easier to discard. "The basement is all that's left?" Cheryl asked. Lauren softened her voice. "Dad left you his savings. He left enough to cover the funeral and 8 months of taxes. I'm not responsible for what medical bills cost." "No. You're responsible for what you did while I was gone." Lauren shut the folder. "I didn't do this to hurt you. The market was failing. You need somewhere easier now. Wanda's house is 1 level. She has a spare room. It's her sewing room. She said you could stay, for recovery, then stay longer." Cheryl looked at Lauren carefully. "Where are my things? Most of them are boxed." "Where?" "I moved them downstairs." There it was. The rest of the morning, packed into one sentence. For years, Cheryl had used the small office behind the market's deli as her place to work and keep personal things. Her winter coat hung there. Donald's account books filled the bottom cabinet. She kept family photographs in the desk and a spare pair of shoes beneath it. After Donald died, she sometimes slept in the caretaker room downstairs when snow made the drive difficult. It had never been comfortable, but it had been available. Lauren had sold the room where Cheryl worked, boxed what remained, and put it in the part nobody wanted. "You could have called," Cheryl said. "You were recovering. I could answer a telephone. The doctor said you needed quiet. The doctor didn't tell you to sell my desk. It came with the unit." Cheryl removed her glasses and folded them. She was tired. The walk from the corner had been longer than it should have felt. Her chest ached beneath the weight of her bag. If she went back to Wanda's house now, Wanda would make tea, pull the curtains, and tell her to rest. Lauren was counting on that. "Give me the basement keys," Cheryl said. Lauren blinked. "What? The keys? You can't stay down there. I didn't say I was staying. You can barely climb those steps. I climbed them for 28 years. You had surgery, and I'm still able to make a decision." Lauren glanced at the ring hanging by the door. "Nathan's people will need access. They can ask. Mom, don't turn this into something. You brought me a paper that gives away something you say has no value. I'm taking time to read it. It has negative value. That's what I'm trying to explain. Then Nathan won't mind waiting. He has crews scheduled. That's his schedule." Lauren's jaw tightened. "The sale agreement represents the building as available for full redevelopment." "Did you tell him you own the full building?" "I told him what I inherited. That wasn't my question." Lauren picked up the folder. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Cheryl took the key ring from the nail. "It was easy because you thought I wouldn't be here." Neither woman spoke. A gust moved through the alley, lifting the edge of the paper sign in the front window. Lauren looked at her mother's coat, at the overnight bag, then at the wet steps. "Come home with me," she said, but the offer had arrived after the papers. "For how long?" "We'll figure that out." "Is the guest room still your office?" Lauren looked away. Cheryl nodded once. "That's what I thought." She went down the steps carefully. The iron railing was cold and slick. At the bottom, she tried the first key, then the second. The second entered, but wouldn't turn. Lauren remained above her. "See? The lock's probably rusted." Cheryl set down her bag. She lifted the door slightly by its handle, taking its weight off the lower hinge, then turned the key. The bolt slid back. Donald had shown her that trick when the door first sagged. Lauren had been away at college then. Cheryl remembered standing where she stood now, holding a sack of potatoes while Donald worked graphite into the lock. She pushed the door open 6 inches. Damp air came through, carrying the smell of concrete, cardboard, and something electrical. A light appeared deeper inside. Cheryl froze. "Who's there?" she called. Footsteps crossed the basement floor. Gary Reed came around a row of metal shelving with a work lamp in one hand. He was 64, broad through the shoulders, with gray hair that needed cutting and a pencil tucked behind one ear. He looked at Cheryl, then at Lauren above her. "Well," he said, "I wondered which one of you would come first." Lauren stared at him. "What are you doing in there?" "Working." "The building was sold. The upstairs was closed. Nobody told me my bench was closed. Your agreement was with my father." Gary's expression stayed calm. "My agreement was to repair the market coolers in exchange for bench space. Donald's gone, but I've paid Cheryl every month since." Lauren looked at her mother. This was new information to her. The payment was small, hardly enough to call rent. Cheryl had kept it separate in an envelope for basement expenses. She hadn't mentioned it because Lauren had never asked what happened below the sales floor. Gary raised the lamp. Water shone across part of the concrete behind him. "You'd better come see this," he told Cheryl. "That storm found a way in, and it didn't wait for anybody's paperwork." Lauren started down the steps. Cheryl put one hand on the railing and blocked her. "Ask," she said. Lauren stopped. For a moment she looked almost offended. Then she looked at the keys in Cheryl's hand. "May I come in?" Cheryl considered her. "Not today." She stepped through the doorway and pulled her bag inside. Gary took it before she had to ask, holding it without making a fuss about her health. Lauren stayed on the bottom step while Cheryl examined the wet floor, the covered workbenches, and the narrow passage leading toward the caretaker room. The place was in worse condition than she had feared. It was also still functioning in ways Lauren hadn't understood. Cheryl turned back to the door. "I'll have someone review the quitclaim," she said. "Until then, nothing down here gets moved, disconnected, or opened without me. Cheryl, Nathan won't accept that. Then Nathan can come speak to me." She closed the door and locked it from the inside. The lock clicked louder than Cheryl expected. Gary lowered the work lamp. "You all right?" "I'm fine. That wasn't what I asked." Cheryl took off her coat and laid it over a dry shelf. The basement air cooled the sweat at the back of her neck. She waited until her breathing settled, then looked at the water. It had spread from the rear wall across an open section of floor. Most of it was shallow, though cardboard cartons near the wall had collapsed into brown pulp. A length of rubber hose floated beside an overturned bucket. Gary pointed toward a floor drain. "That's the trouble. It backed up during the storm. I tried the grate, but I can't get low enough to reach behind the shelving." "You're 64, Gary. I'm aware. You say that like I'm supposed to be younger. I'm saying we both need better knees." That got a small breath of laughter from her. It also hurt, so she pressed a hand to her chest. Gary noticed and turned away with enough tact to let her recover, without pretending he hadn't seen. "What's in those boxes?" she asked. "Yours, I think. Lauren had 2 men bring them down last week. Did she come with them?" She stood at the door. Of course she had. Lauren had never liked the basement. Even as a grown woman, she came down only when Donald asked her to fetch something. She disliked the pipes overhead, the unfinished walls, and the way sound traveled from room to room. She called it creepy. Donald called it honest. Cheryl moved toward the boxes, stepping around the water. Someone had written office on each one with a black marker. Her desk calendar lay on top of the nearest carton. A coffee ring covered the month of May. "Were they wet when they arrived?" she asked. "No." "So this happened after?" Gary nodded. "Last night, most likely." Cheryl opened the top carton. The bottom had gone soft. She pulled out 2 account ledgers, a bag of pens, and a framed photograph of Donald standing beside the market's first produce display. Water had crept under the glass. She removed the photograph and wiped it with her sleeve. In the picture, Donald was 40 years younger than he'd been when he died. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbows. A handwritten sign behind him advertised peaches by the pound. Cheryl had taken the photograph before the store opened on its first morning. She didn't need the picture to remember that day. She remembered the produce truck coming late. She remembered counting the cash drawer twice because Donald had forgotten the pennies. She remembered Lauren sitting in the office, already grown enough to be impatient with them, asking how long she had to stay. The market had never belonged to the three of them in equal ways. Donald loved fixing what broke. Cheryl loved making the numbers agree. Lauren loved the fact that everybody in town knew the Holt name. Cheryl set the picture on a high shelf. We need to move the boxes. Gary looked toward the door. You shouldn't be carrying them. I can sort, I can carry. That sounds like a division of labor. It sounds like your doctor would approve. My doctor would like me to spend the next month in a recliner. Your doctor doesn't have wet ledgers. Gary lifted the first box. Cheryl directed him toward a row of metal shelving near the caretaker room. They worked without hurry. She opened each carton before he moved it, taking out anything heavy enough to split the bottom. A stapler, 3 binders, Donald's old adding machine, her spare shoes, her winter coat had been folded inside a trash bag. A label was stuck to it. Donate. Cheryl held the coat by the shoulders. It was a dark green wool coat she had worn for 11 winters. One pocket still held a peppermint and a grocery receipt. Gary read the label, then looked at the floor. She probably thought it was old, he said. It is old, still warm. Yes. Cheryl pulled off the label and put the coat on a shelf. That had been the pattern between her and Lauren for years. Lauren decided what was outdated. Cheryl rescued it quietly, then acted as if no decision had been made. It worked with coats, furniture, holiday dishes, and eventually the store itself. When Lauren wanted the deli closed on Mondays, Cheryl covered it without saying so. When Lauren changed suppliers, Cheryl found room in the budget. When payroll came up short, Cheryl moved money from Donald's remaining savings and called it temporary. Each small rescue had protected Lauren from knowing what her choices cost. Cheryl had called it helping. Now she wondered what Lauren had called it. Gary returned to the damaged cartons. Did she know you were coming back today? She knew. She told me the basement had to be empty by Friday. Cheryl turned. She told you that? Monday afternoon. She said the new owner was taking over everything. What did you say? I asked where she wanted the compressors moved. And? She said that wasn't her problem. Gary spoke without anger. That made the words harder to dismiss. His workshop occupied the rear section, beyond the shelving. 2 long benches stood there under canvas covers. He repaired restaurant refrigerators, grocery coolers, and old appliances no manufacturer wanted to remember. Donald had given him the space after a rent increase pushed him out of a garage across town. The arrangement had been useful to both men. Gary kept the market's equipment running. Donald gave him a place with loading access and thick concrete walls where nobody minded the noise. What were you going to do? Cheryl asked. Move what I could into a storage unit, and the benches, take them apart. They were built down here. I know. Donald helped build them. I know that too. Gary's face remained still, but his hand closed around the handle of the work lamp. Cheryl looked toward the covered benches. She had been so fixed on what Lauren had done to her that she hadn't considered who else had been cleared away with the same decision. You should have called me, she said. I did. I didn't get a call. I left 2 messages with Lauren. Why with Lauren? She told me you weren't taking business calls. Cheryl's first reaction was to defend her daughter. Lauren had spent the day of the surgery at the hospital. She had brought a clean robe, charged Cheryl's phone, and spoken to the nurses. For the first week, she called Wanda every evening. She asked about blood pressure, medication, and whether Cheryl was walking enough. Cheryl had been grateful. She was still grateful. But Lauren had also decided which calls Cheryl could receive. She said I was sleeping most of the day, Cheryl told him. Were you? For the first few days. Gary waited. Not for 6 weeks, she added. He nodded once. I figured you'd call when you could. Cheryl took out her phone. Gary's number wasn't in the recent calls. Neither were messages from the produce supplier, the bakery, or the woman who cleaned the store on Thursdays. Lauren had told everyone to leave Cheryl alone. Cheryl had accepted the quiet because it felt like care. A knock sounded against the basement door. Gary glanced at Cheryl, expecting someone. No. The knock came again, 3 firm taps, followed by Wanda's voice. Cheryl, I know you're in there. Your daughter called me. Cheryl opened the door. Wanda stood on the bottom step, holding a pharmacy bag and a paper cup. At 70, she had the solid posture of someone who didn't believe in leaning unless a wall truly deserved it. Her silver hair was pinned at the back with 2 plastic clips. She held out the cup. Tea. You came all the way back? I got halfway to my appointment and decided my teeth could wait. It was just a cleaning, that's what I told them. Wanda stepped inside and studied the water, the damaged boxes, and Gary's lamp. Then she looked at Cheryl. You're not fine. I didn't say I was. That's progress. Gary took Wanda's coat. She handed Cheryl the pharmacy bag. You left your afternoon pills in my kitchen, Wanda said. Lauren was in such a state, I thought perhaps the building had fallen on you. She wanted me to sign something. I heard. She tell you what it was? She called it a release. It was a quit claim. Wanda's eyebrows rose. To what? That's the question. Cheryl explained what the paper said. She kept it simple, but Wanda's mouth tightened when she heard that Lauren wanted a claim against the whole address released. Donald wouldn't have liked that, Wanda said. Donald isn't here. No, but he wasn't careless. Lauren inherited upstairs. I know what she inherited. Cheryl waited. Wanda looked around the basement. Her gaze moved over the pipes, shelving, and wet floor. My brother always said you'd have the working half. What does that mean? I assumed he meant the business, the part you ran. He left the store to Lauren. I know. Did he ever say something else? Not clearly. Cheryl felt irritation rise. Wanda had a way of producing half a memory when everyone needed a whole one. When did he say it? More than once. Usually when Lauren talked about selling after he got sick. He said, she can do what she wants with her half. Cheryl will always have the working half. Gary looked toward the back of the basement. Cheryl did too, though she didn't know what they expected to see. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. I thought you knew. That answer had followed Cheryl through most of her marriage. Donald thought she knew what he intended. Lauren thought she knew what Cheryl could manage. Wanda thought she knew what Donald had arranged. Cheryl made herself useful inside everyone else's assumptions and rarely asked them to explain. She had believed being needed meant being secure. It hadn't occurred to her that a person could be needed every day and still be left without a front door key. Wanda touched the pharmacy bag. Take your pill. I need food with it. I brought crackers. You carry crackers to a dental cleaning? I'm 70. I carry whatever I please. Cheryl sat on an upturned milk crate. Wanda opened the packet and handed her 4 square crackers. Gary found a clean jar lid and filled it with water from a bottle near his bench. They stood nearby while she took the pill. Neither of them watched too closely. Afterward, Wanda said, You're coming back with me. I need to deal with the water. Gary can deal with the water. Gary shook his head. Not alone. The shelving has to move, and I need someone who remembers where the drain line runs. I remember, Cheryl said. Wanda looked at her. You also need somewhere to sleep. The caretaker room has a bed. It has a cot. A cot is a bed if you put sheets on it. You just had your chest opened. And your spare room is full of fabric you've been collecting since shoulder pads were fashionable. I can move the fabric. For how long? Wanda didn't answer quickly enough. Cheryl loved her. Wanda had taken her in without hesitation, cooked low-salt meals, and driven her to every follow-up appointment. But Wanda had her own house, her own routines, and a dining table covered with quilting pieces. Cheryl had spent 6 weeks trying not to leave a glass by the sink. She didn't want to become permanent by being too polite to discuss it. I can stay tonight, Wanda said. We'll clear the room together. That isn't what I asked. You didn't ask anything. No, that's part of the problem. The words came out sharper than Cheryl intended. Wanda absorbed them, then sat on another crate. All right, she said. Ask. Cheryl looked down at the pharmacy bag. Did you expect me to live with you after the surgery? I expected you to recover with me. And after? I thought you'd go back to the market. So did I. The 3 of them listened to water drip somewhere behind the wall. Wanda reached for Cheryl's hand. You can stay as long as you need, but if you're asking whether I plan for us to live together, no. I didn't plan that far. It hurt, but it was clean. Cheryl squeezed her fingers. Thank you. For what? For not turning kindness into a promise you didn't make. Gary cleared his throat. If we move those 2 shelves, I can get to the drain. Wanda stood. Tell me what I can lift. You can hold the lamp. I can do more than hold a lamp, then hold it steadily. They worked for nearly an hour. Gary removed the heavy items. Wanda carried tools and loose parts. Cheryl sat when she needed to, but she remembered how the shelving had been assembled. One rear bracket hooked over a pipe support and had to be lifted before the frame would slide. Behind it, they found the drain opening packed with paper labels, leaves, and a strip of plastic wrapping. Gary used pliers to pull out the blockage. Water circled the grate, slowly at first, then with a low swallowing sound. That's going, Wanda said. They watched the wet line retreat from the nearest boxes. The repair was small, the wall still leaked, the room still smelled damp, but the water was moving in the right direction, and Cheryl had known how to make room for it. Gary set the work lamp on the shelf. The caretaker room stayed dry, he said. Mostly. Mostly? One corner near the sink. Cheryl picked up the overnight bag. Show me. The room held a narrow cot, a metal sink, 2 cabinets, and a hot plate with 1 blackened burner. Her boxes filled half the floor. Someone had placed Donald's adding machine on the pillow. Cheryl moved it to the table. Wanda stood in the doorway. One night. One night, Cheryl agreed. It wasn't a promise to leave. It was only the amount of future she could manage honestly. She opened the bag, took out her nightclothes, and placed them in the least damaged cabinet. Then she hung the green wool coat on the hook beside the cot. The hook pulled loose from the wall under the coat's weight. Cheryl caught the coat before it fell. A small cone of plaster dust landed on the floor. Gary picked up the screw. That wall's softer than it looks. So am I today. That's why you're going to bed. Wanda found a clean sheet in one of Cheryl's boxes. She shook it over the cot, then stopped when dust rose from the mattress. This needs to go outside, she said. It's dark. It'll still need to go outside in daylight. They covered the cot with 2 folded blankets and put the clean sheet over those. Gary brought in a portable heater, but didn't plug it in. I don't trust that outlet, he said. The lamp used to be there. A lot of things used to work. He turned the heater so Cheryl could see the cord had been wrapped with red tape. This is only until I bring a better one. Wanda gave him a look. I wasn't planning to leave it running, Cheryl said. Good, they both answered. By 9, the basement was quiet. Gary left through the rear door after checking the lock twice. Wanda remained long enough to write the times of Cheryl's medications on a paper grocery bag and tape it above the sink. You already told me, Cheryl said. I know, and the bottles have labels. I know that too. Cheryl let her finish. Wanda put the pharmacy bag beside the hot plate. Call me if you feel pressure, dizziness, nausea, shortness of breath, or anything that seems wrong. What if I feel annoyed? That means you're recovering. Wanda left with the promise that she would return before 8 the next morning. Cheryl locked the door behind her and stood in the caretaker room, listening to pipes knock overhead. The building sounded different without the market. For years, the basement ceiling had carried every ordinary noise from upstairs. Shopping carts rattled across tile. The deli slicer hummed. Donald's shoes crossed the stockroom at a pace Cheryl could recognize without looking. Even after he died, the sounds of customers and deliveries kept the place connected. Now there was nothing above her. She turned off the work lamp and lay down in the dark. The first night passed in pieces. She woke when a truck backed into the alley. She woke when the heater's metal casing made a cooling tick, though it had never been turned on. At 2 in the morning, water tapped into the sink from the old faucet. At 4, she got up and tightened it with both hands. When daylight reached the narrow window near the ceiling, Cheryl was sitting at the table with Donald's adding machine in front of her. It didn't work without electricity, but she pressed the keys anyway. Each one made a solid mechanical click. Donald had bought it used when they opened the market. Cheryl had complained that it was already outdated. Then she used it for nearly 20 years. A note had been taped to the bottom. Property of Holt Family Market. The handwriting was hers. She peeled it off and placed it on the table. By the time Wanda arrived, Cheryl had made 3 lists on the back of the grocery bag. 1 covered damaged personal things. 1 covered building problems she could see. The 3rd listed questions nobody had answered. Wanda read over her shoulder. You slept? She asked. Some. You made lists. I do that when I don't sleep. Your doctor said to walk, not operate a warehouse. I'm not operating anything. Gary came in behind her carrying a tool case and 2 breakfast sandwiches wrapped in foil. I brought eggs, he said. 1 has no cheese. Wanda took the no cheese sandwich and handed it to Cheryl before she could choose. They ate near the workbench because the caretaker room had only 1 chair. Gary had already removed the covers from his equipment. His benches held meters, pressure gauges, coils of wire, and trays filled with screws sorted by size. Cheryl looked at the power cords hanging from the bench edge. How long has the electricity been off down here? Not sure it is. You said you didn't trust the outlets. I don't. That's different. Lauren said, Nathan controls the utilities now. Gary wiped his hands on a cloth. She said he was shutting off the store account after the sale. Did he? The lights upstairs went dark Tuesday, and down here. I stopped using the wall power when water came in. Before that, the bench outlets worked. Cheryl set down the sandwich. After the sale, 2 days after at least, I ran the vacuum pump Thursday. That doesn't make sense. It might. Donald changed things around more than once. Changed what? The electrical service. Wanda folded the foil from her sandwich into a careful square. When? I helped him replace some conduit years ago. That's all I remember. You don't remember why? Cheryl asked. He said he wanted the lower floor to stand on its own. Gary glanced toward the rear wall. At the time, I thought he meant not losing the freezers if somebody tripped a breaker upstairs. Donald was practical in that way. He never explained a plan if a shorter sentence could get the work done. Cheryl had accepted that habit because she understood his daily decisions. The larger ones had seemed like his responsibility. Now, his larger decisions were the only thing she needed from him. Show me the panel, she said. It's behind the dry storage racks. Then we move them. Wanda shook her head. You're not moving another shelf. I'm not. Gary is. Gary finished his sandwich. That's becoming the arrangement around here. They walked to the rear section. The electrical panel was mounted inside a shallow wall cabinet behind 2 rolling racks. One rack moved easily. The other had a bent wheel. Cheryl found a flat piece of wood and slid it under the wheel while Gary pushed. The rack rolled clear without tipping. That's one, she said. Wanda held up the work lamp. Your tiny agency reward for the morning. My what? You got a shelf to move without lifting it. I'll put it on the list. Gary opened the cabinet. Inside were 2 metal boxes. The larger one held a row of old breakers. Several were marked in Donald's handwriting. Bench, rear lights, freezer wall, caretaker. A smaller switch box below it had no labels at all. The manufacturer's plate had been painted over. There was no owner name, unit number, or service address inside the door. Gary crouched beside it. Don't touch anything yet, Cheryl said. I wasn't going to. You were reaching, I was pointing. You point with a screwdriver? It's a useful finger. He removed the screwdriver from his hand and picked up a voltage tester instead. Before doing anything else, he examined the floor around the cabinet and made sure it was dry. Cheryl watched from several feet away. Can you tell where it comes from? Maybe. He tested the outer case, then the main connections. The tester gave a short tone. There's power here, he said. Wanda lowered the lamp slightly. From upstairs? That's what we're finding out. Gary switched off every marked breaker. The caretaker room went dark. The rear lights had already been off, but the small indicator on his bench charger disappeared. Then he opened the cover below the breakers and followed a thick gray cable into the wall. It ran down, not up. That's odd, he said. What? Most of the old store wiring drops from the ceiling. This feed goes through the foundation wall. He walked to the back of the building and opened another access cabinet. Cheryl and Wanda followed. A row of pipes and conduits entered through the concrete. Some were rusted. One conduit looked newer than the others and carried the same gray cable. Gary traced it to the outer wall. It goes toward the meters. Cheryl remembered the 2 boxes beside the loading door. The new one and the old one. Looks like the old one. That's the cloudy one. Probably. Probably isn't enough. No, it isn't. Gary returned to the panel and turned on the breaker marked Caretaker. A ceiling bulb in the small room came to life. It was weak and yellow, but it stayed on. Next, he turned on rear lights. 2 fluorescent fixtures flickered above the workshop. 1 tube failed. The other 3 settled into a steady glow. The basement no longer depended on the work lamp. Wanda looked up. So Lauren was wrong. We don't know that yet, Gary said. She said the electricity was shut off. The upstairs electricity was shut off. Cheryl walked back to the panel. She kept her hands at her sides. If this feed goes to a different meter, does that make it a separate account? Usually. Whose account? Gary tapped the blank inner door. It doesn't say. Would the bill say? Yes. Cheryl thought of the market's utility bills. She had paid them for years, but Lauren had moved most accounts online after Donald died. Cheryl received paper statements for some expenses and email notices for others. The totals came from the business checking account, and she entered them into one utilities line each month. She had stopped asking which payment covered which service. Where are the old bills? Gary asked. In the office files, if Lauren didn't throw them away. Those upstairs? Some. The older records may be in my boxes. Cheryl went to the damaged cartons. She opened the one marked Tax and Utilities. The upper folders were dry. The lower ones had absorbed water along their edges. She spread them across the metal shelves. Wanda picked up a folder. What year? Anything after Donald changed the service. When was that? Wanda asked. Gary looked at the conduit again. 10 or 12 years ago. Maybe longer. Cheryl sorted by date. Donald saved everything, including statements with zero balances and inspection notices that had expired years earlier. Lauren had complained about the paper every January. Cheryl had defended it, though she rarely looked inside the oldest files. They found bills for trash collection, water, gas, telephone service, and the market's main electric account. The address appeared on all of them, but none mentioned the basement. Then Wanda held up a narrow envelope. This one has your name. Cheryl took it quickly. It was an old electric bill, but it belonged to the house where she and Donald had lived before his death. It had been placed in the wrong folder. She let out a breath. Gary continued sorting. There may not be a paper bill. Donald used automatic payments for a while. He hated automatic payments, Cheryl said. He hated late fees more. That was true. Cheryl opened her banking application on the phone. She still had access to the small personal checking account she and Donald had shared. After his death, she removed his name, but left several recurring charges in place. There was one monthly utility payment she had never questioned. The amount varied between $30 and $50. It was small enough that she had assumed it covered an exterior light or an old service fee at the house. The most recent payment had cleared 4 days earlier. Cheryl turned the phone so Gary could see. Would that be enough for this basement? With almost nothing running, it could be. The account description contained only an abbreviated utility name and the last 4 digits of an account number. It didn't identify a meter, service location, or unit. Cheryl felt relief first. Something had worked. Her own payment might be the reason the lights had come on. Then she saw the wider problem. Lauren had handled the market's online accounts for 2 years. Cheryl had continued paying one charge from her own checking account without asking what it covered. She had trusted the bookkeeping summary because she had helped design it. She had trusted Lauren because questioning her felt too much like taking back authority after giving it away. Cheryl sat on the lowest dry step. How many months have I paid this? She scrolled through the records. The charge appeared again and again. Since before Donald died, she said. Wanda looked at the blank service panel. He must have known. He knew. I didn't. Gary turned off the unsafe outlets and left the lighting circuits on. We still need someone to check that panel properly, he said. The main connection has heat damage. If we load the benches, it could fail. What does that cost? An inspection is one thing. Repairs are another. Give me a useful answer. For the immediate work, maybe a few thousand. If the conduit is damaged or the panel has to be replaced, more. Cheryl looked at the caretaker light through the doorway. She had enough savings to continue recovering quietly. She did not have enough to fix every problem Donald had left underground. Her phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. Cheryl answered. Mom, Nathan's contractor needs access Monday morning, Lauren said. They're tracing utilities before demolition. Demolition of what? The upstairs interior. Then he doesn't need my keys. He says some of the electrical runs through the basement. Some does, some doesn't. Lauren went silent. Cheryl looked at Gary. I'm having the lower service inspected. Why? Because it's active. That's impossible. The lights are on. Then it's connected to Nathan's account. Maybe. I'm going to find out. Don't spend money on that basement. It was the first thing Lauren had said that sounded less like instruction than fear. Cheryl rose from the step. I'm not signing anything Monday, she said, and no contractor enters until I know which service he means. She ended the call before Lauren could answer. Gary closed the panel cabinet. So, what are we doing? Cheryl looked at the folders spread across the shelf, the live lights, and the monthly charge still leaving her account. We're finding out what I've been paying for, she said. Gary wrote the last 4 digits on a piece of masking tape and stuck it inside the cabinet. That won't tell us where the account is, he said, but it gives us something to match. Cheryl called the bank first. The woman who answered could confirm that the payment went to the local utility. She could not provide the full customer account number or the service address attached to it. You authorized the recurring charge, she said. When? The authorization predates the records I can see. Can you stop it? Yes. Cheryl looked at the lit workshop. Don't. After the call, she tried the utility's automated number. It asked for an account number she didn't have. When she reached a person, she was told they needed either the full number or the meter identification before they could discuss a service location. The meter is behind the building, Cheryl said. Then the identification should be printed below the glass. The glass was clouded, and the metal tag beneath it had been painted over. Gary cleaned the front with a cloth, but the numbers remained unreadable. He stopped before scraping the paint. "We leave the seal alone," he said, "so we have power, a payment, and no name. That's what we know." It wasn't much, but it was more than Lauren had expected her to find. Cheryl called a locksmith next. Lauren still had keys. So did the men who had carried down the boxes, and Nathan's contractor might have another copy. Cheryl had spent one night behind a door that anyone could open if they lifted the handle correctly. The locksmith changed the cylinder that afternoon. Cheryl paid from her personal account and accepted 3 new keys. One went on her ring. One went to Gary. She put the third inside an envelope and handed it to Wanda. Wanda turned it over. "You trust me with this?" "I trust you to knock." "That's not the same thing." "No, it's better." They agreed that Cheryl would sleep at Wanda's house that night. The cot had left a hard ache across her shoulders, and she needed a shower that didn't drip rust-colored water for the first minute. Before leaving, Cheryl taped a notice to the basement door. "Lower-level access by appointment. Call Cheryl Holt." She wrote the phone number beneath it. Gary read the sign. "Lauren won't like that. She doesn't have to like a phone number." On Sunday, Cheryl returned after breakfast with clean clothes, 2 towels, and a folding chair from Wanda's garage. She sat at the workbench while Gary tested each circuit. One outlet near the rear wall was dry and properly grounded. Another showed heat damage. The caretaker circuit could support lights and a small refrigerator, but not the portable heater. The old freezer wall circuit was dead. Gary marked each one with colored tape. "What can we use safely?" Cheryl asked. "The lights, 1 bench outlet, the refrigerator in your room, if it still works. And what can't we use?" "Everything you want." He opened the rear cabinet again. "The damage breaker needs replacement. This panel also needs someone licensed to examine the main connection. I can trace it. I'm not signing off on it." Cheryl called 2 electrical companies. One could come late in the week. The other offered an emergency inspection Monday afternoon for a higher charge. She booked Monday. Wanda watched her put down a deposit. "That was recovery money," she said. "It still is. I don't see how. I can't recover in a room that catches fire. That isn't what I mean." Cheryl closed her wallet. "I know." She had planned to use those savings for prescription charges, follow-up visits, and several quiet months while deciding what came next. Every dollar she put into the basement shortened that time. She didn't yet know if she was protecting a place or merely improving someone else's property. That was why the inspection couldn't wait. At 8 Monday morning, someone tried the old key. Metal scraped against the new cylinder. Then the handle lifted in the familiar way, but the lock didn't turn. Cheryl was in the caretaker room buttoning her blouse. Gary stood from his bench. The person outside tried again. Cheryl finished the button, walked to the door, and opened it. Lauren stood on the bottom step with Nathan Sutton behind her. 2 workers waited in the alley near a stack of tool cases. Lauren stared at the new lock. "You changed it." "Yes. You didn't tell me. The sign tells you how to get in." Nathan stepped forward before Lauren could answer. At 46, he had the careful, rested look of a man who paid other people to arrive earlier than he did. He wore work boots that were clean around the stitching and carried a rolled set of plans beneath one arm. "Mrs. Holt," he said. "Nathan Sutton. Cheryl is fine." He offered his hand. She shook it. "I understand there's confusion about access. There's confusion about more than that. I'd like to keep this simple. We're removing the upstairs walls today. My people need to identify anything feeding through the lower level." "Which people?" "My electrical contractor and site foreman. They can wait outside while you and I talk." Lauren moved forward. "Mom, they're on the clock. So is the electrician I hired for this afternoon." Nathan's attention sharpened. "You hired an electrician?" "To inspect the lower service." "There is no lower service. This is all tied into the retail unit. Then the inspection will be quick." Gary came into view behind Cheryl. Nathan looked past her at the lit fixtures. "I thought power was off," he said. "Upstairs," Gary answered. Nathan looked at Lauren. She lifted both hands. "I told you I didn't know what Dad did down here. You said the lower level was storage tied to the store. It is. Cheryl stepped aside enough to let Nathan see the panel cabinet, but not enough to invite him in. I'll allow one electrician inside, she said. Gary stays with him. Nothing gets opened except the electrical cabinets. Nothing gets removed. You and Lauren can come in if you agree to that. Nathan considered the workers behind him. Delay cost him money. Refusal would cost him more. All right, he said. Cheryl took a notebook from the shelf and wrote the date, time, and names of everyone entering. Nathan watched her. Is that necessary? It is today. The electrical contractor entered with a tester and a small flashlight. He didn't argue about Gary following him. Lauren stood near the door. Nathan unrolled his plans on an empty table. Cheryl looked at the drawing. It showed the street-level walls, upper loading door, stairs, and restroom. The basement appeared only as a shaded rectangle labeled Existing Lower Area. No rooms were drawn, no rear access appeared. The caretaker room wasn't marked. Who made this? She asked. My architect, from the seller's plans and site measurements. Nobody measured down here. We were told the lower area would be cleared after closing. Lauren looked at the floor. Nathan pointed to a line near the stairwell. The upper electrical riser may pass through this wall. If it does, we need access during demolition. The contractor removed the panel cover and tested the incoming line. Then he asked one of the workers upstairs to shut off the upper main. A few seconds later, they heard a call through the open stairwell. Main is off. The basement lights remained on. The contractor tested again. This panel's still live. Residual, Nathan asked. No. Generator? Gary shook his head. No generator. The contractor followed the conduit to the rear wall, just as Gary had. He stepped outside, examined both meter housings, and returned. It's a separate feed, he said. Old work, but separate. Can you tell which meter? Cheryl asked. The older one appears to serve down here. I can't read the tag without the utility opening the housing. Nathan tapped the plans with one finger. That should have been included in the property information. Lauren crossed her arms. My mother handled the bills. Cheryl turned to her. You moved them online after Dad died? You were still doing the books. I entered totals. You controlled the accounts. Nathan looked between them. He had expected a family disagreement he could move past with a signature. He was beginning to understand that each woman had relied on the other not to examine what Donald left. Who pays for the lower service? He asked. I may, Cheryl said. May? There's a utility charge from my checking account. We haven't matched it to the meter. Nathan rolled up the plans. Then we need the utility out here. Not until I know what you're asking them to do. To identify the feeds. Identification is fine. Disconnection isn't. I can't have an unknown live service beside demolition. You can keep your demolition upstairs. There are shared walls, pipes, and access points. Then show me each one before you touch it. Lauren stepped closer to Cheryl. This is exactly why we needed the quitclaim. No. This is why I didn't sign it. The contractor replaced the panel cover. His function was finished. He told Nathan the upper demolition could proceed if the crew stayed clear of the lower conduit and stairwell wall. Any work near those areas would require another plan. Nathan didn't like it, but he accepted it. The stairwell will need to be closed on our side, he told Cheryl. You can secure your door at the top. The lower stairs stay accessible from here, for now, for as long as I have the key. Nathan studied her. You're living here? I'm using the caretaker room. That room is an approved residential space. It was built for a caretaker. That doesn't answer the question. It answers what I'm doing today. He rolled the plans tighter. I'm not trying to put you out. I bought the upper unit based on certain expectations, then discussed those expectations with the person who sold it. Lauren's face flushed. Nathan went upstairs with his workers. The drilling began 20 minutes later, first as a low vibration, then as sharp impacts that shook dust from the basement pipes. Lauren remained. You embarrassed me, she said. Cheryl wrote the contractor's findings in her notebook. He asked questions. You made it look like I hid something. Did you? No. I didn't know about the separate service. Neither did I. You paid the bill. I paid what was put in front of me. That isn't my fault. No, it's mine too. Lauren hadn't expected that answer. Cheryl closed the notebook. I let you handle decisions because I thought you needed to feel the store was yours. Then I fixed the results quietly. That wasn't good for either of us. Please don't turn this into a family therapy session. I'm not. I'm telling you why I won't sign. Lauren lowered her voice. If Nathan has to redesign the renovation, he can come after me for the added cost. Did you promise him the basement? I promised access would be resolved. Without asking me, I thought it was leftover storage. You also thought I'd sign. Lauren looked toward the caretaker room. What do you even want with this place? Cheryl didn't have a complete answer. Shelter had brought her through the door. The live circuit had kept her there. Neither explained why she felt more awake in a damp basement than she had during 6 careful weeks at Wanda's house. I want time to find out what Donald did, she said. How much time? As much as the facts require. Lauren picked up her handbag. Nathan won't wait forever. Then he can put his deadlines in writing. After Lauren left, Gary plugged his vacuum pump into the safe bench outlet. The motor started with a steady hum. He watched the gauge rise. First time I've run it since Thursday, he said. What job is it for? Restaurant cooler. They've got food sitting in rented refrigerators. When is it due? Wednesday. Can you finish? With this outlet, yes. Cheryl went to the caretaker room and brought back the receipt book from her boxes. Gary reached for his wallet. You sure? No, that's honest. But if you're staying, we do it properly. He counted out the same small monthly payment he had made before. Cheryl wrote the date, the amount, and lower workshop space on the receipt. She gave him the original and kept the copy. The payment didn't cover the locksmith, much less the electrical inspection. It did something else. It made Gary's place in the basement visible, and it made Cheryl responsible for the space she had allowed him to use. At noon, the electrician Cheryl hired inspected the heat damage. The safe circuit could remain active under a limited load. The damaged ones had to stay off. A proper panel replacement, drainage work, and repairs to the rear wall would cost far more than Cheryl had hoped. This is only the urgent part, he told her. He wrote an estimate and left. Cheryl read the bottom line twice. She could pay it, but doing so would take money meant to carry her through summer. Upstairs, a section of wall came down with a heavy crash. Dust drifted from the ceiling and settled across Gary's running bench. Then Cheryl's phone sounded with a message from Nathan. He had attached a formal request for utility identification and access. Work near the stairwell would begin at the end of the week. If the lower service interfered, he intended to have the meter disconnected until ownership and responsibility were clarified. Cheryl looked at the lit ceiling, the running pump, and Gary's receipt copy beneath her hand. Retreat no longer meant leaving an empty room. It meant shutting down work that had just begun again. She folded the estimate and put it beneath the receipt book. What has to happen first? She asked the electrician. Keep water away from the panel, replace the damaged breakers, then decide whether you're repairing the whole service or only making it safe. How long can the safe circuit carry Gary's equipment? If he uses one machine at a time, it should hold. No heaters, no freezer bank, nothing else with a heavy draw. Gary nodded. I can work with that. The electrician pointed toward the rear wall. A dark line had formed above the conduit since morning. That needs attention before the next rain. He packed his tools and left through the alley. Cheryl watched him go, then called Wanda. I need your folding table, she said. You already took my folding chair. I'll return both. That isn't why I mentioned it. I know. Can you bring the table? Wanda arrived with the table, a push broom, 3 plastic storage tubs, and a pair of rubber boots for Cheryl. You're not wearing these for decoration, she said. They're too large. Wear 2 pairs of socks. They set the table in the dry center of the basement. Cheryl moved her papers there, including Nathan's message and the electrical estimate. Gary found a roll of clear plastic and hung it from the ceiling joists to keep demolition dust away from his bench. Each impact upstairs sent a faint tremor through the pipes. Most were harmless. One wasn't? A metal coupling near the rear wall shifted with a dull snap. Water began running down the concrete in a thin, steady line. Gary reached for the shutoff valve. Not that one, Cheryl said. That shuts water to the caretaker sink. It's feeding something. That pipe goes upstairs. He put his hand near the leak without touching it. Cold water. Another strike sounded above them. The stream widened. Cheryl called Nathan. He answered over the noise. I'm in the front room. Have them stop. What happened? A pipe moved. The drilling ceased less than a minute later. Nathan came down the interior stairs, stepping over plaster fragments. The door at the top had been removed, leaving the full stairwell open to the stripped retail floor. He examined the water line. That pipe isn't on our plan, he said. It's been there longer than your plan. Is there a shutoff? Upstairs, behind the old deli wall. We removed that wall. Then you saw the valve. Nathan called to someone above. A worker shut it off. The stream slowed to a drip. Gary wiped the pipe clean. The coupling had corroded nearly through before the vibration moved it. Nathan crouched beside him. That would have failed anyway. Probably, Gary said. But it failed today, Cheryl said. Nathan stood. I'll have my plumber repair the coupling and restore the water. If it feeds both levels, yes. That's what I needed to hear. He looked at her. Nathan wasn't accustomed to having ordinary promises repeated back as commitments. He took out his phone and sent a message. The plumber will be here this afternoon. Cheryl wrote it in her notebook. Nathan noticed. You document everything? I should have started sooner. His eyes moved over the plastic sheeting, the folding table, and the newly sorted boxes. The basement no longer looked like a room waiting to be emptied. Gary's pump ran on the bench. Cheryl's coat hung beside the caretaker door. A kettle sat near the sink. You're putting money into this, he said. I'm keeping it safe. You don't know that you have the right to make improvements. You don't know that I don't. He glanced toward the panel. The sale gives me the upper unit and all systems serving it. This service isn't serving it. We don't know what it serves. The lights down here stayed on when your main went off. That proves there are 2 feeds. It doesn't prove who controls the second. Cheryl agreed with that, though she didn't say so. Nathan was careful with the part he knew and confident about the part he wanted. He walked to the rear door and opened it. From there, he could see the loading space and alley. This access wasn't on the plan either. It's been here since before we bought the market. My project needs a rear delivery route. You have the upper loading door. The grade is better here. It's my only door. Nathan let the basement door close. Lauren said this would be cleared. Lauren doesn't use it. That isn't the same as saying she had no authority over it. No, it isn't. Nathan looked toward Gary. And you're operating a business? I'm repairing one cooler. Do you carry insurance? Yes. Does it list this address? Gary hesitated. It lists my mailing address and off-site work. Nathan's expression didn't change, but the hesitation had given him something useful. If you're running equipment here, I need that documented, he said. Any incident could affect my construction coverage. Cheryl understood the pressure. Nathan wasn't threatening to call anyone. He didn't need to. Every useful thing they restored created another requirement. Send me what you need in writing, she said. I will. He went upstairs. Gary turned off the pump. You don't have to do that, Cheryl said. I need to call my insurer. Will they cover the bench? If the wiring passes, if the space is recognized for commercial use, if I pay more, how much more? I don't know. Wanda swept damp plaster into a pile. Nobody ever tells you a price while you're still able to say no. Gary smiled, but he remained worried. The plumber repaired the coupling that afternoon. Nathan paid for that work without argument. The repair restored water to the caretaker's sink and one service faucet near Gary's bench. Cheryl tested both. The water ran clear after a minute. It was the first thing Nathan's renovation had damaged and then properly restored. She wrote that down too. When the workers left, Gary opened the panel cabinet to replace the painted outer board with a sheet of clean plywood. The old board had swollen at the bottom from repeated dampness. He removed 4 screws. The board pulled away from the concrete, revealing a shallow chase where the conduit entered. Something white was wedged behind the upper edge. Gary reached in and removed a folded index card wrapped in brittle, transparent tape. Donald's handwriting, he said. Cheryl took it. The ink had faded, but the message was short. Lower. Feed stays separate. Do not tie to store main. Ask Cheryl before changes. Beneath that, Donald had written a date from 12 years earlier. Wanda read it over Cheryl's shoulder. That's what he meant. It tells us what he wanted done, Cheryl said. It doesn't tell us why. He put your name on it. He asked that I be consulted. You were his bookkeeper. I was his wife. Wanda's tone sharpened. You don't need to reduce yourself before Lauren gets the chance. Cheryl folded the card along its existing crease. I'm not reducing anything. I'm trying not to make it prove more than it proves. Gary nodded. It proves the separation was deliberate, and that Donald expected me to have a say. That's useful, Wanda said. It was useful. It was also only an instruction left in a wall. Nathan could call it an old maintenance note. Lauren could say Donald had meant Cheryl should approve electrical work while she ran the books. Cheryl slipped the card into a clear envelope from her office supplies. She wrote where they had found it, the date, and who had been present. Gary and Wanda added their initials. "What now?" Gary asked. "We follow what the card points to. The service, and anything Donald kept from the year he wrote it." They returned to the utility folders. Cheryl searched the older statements by date. That year contained more paper than the others. Donald had replaced 2 coolers, repaired the rear drain, and paid several county recording fees. The receipts didn't say what had been recorded. One check register entry carried only the word map. Wanda leaned closer. A survey? Maybe. A building plan? Could be. Gary examined the faded card again. He was doing more than replacing a breaker. Cheryl opened another folder and found a copy of an application for separate electrical service. The top corner had been torn away, removing most of the account details. The service description remained: lower commercial area, rear access. There was no owner name visible. The signature page was missing. Would the utility keep the full application? Wanda asked. They might. Nathan's message required identification before work near the stairwell. Cheryl now had a reason to make that identification happen. She also had a reason to be careful about who controlled the appointment. Her phone rang again. This time, Lauren was outside. Cheryl opened the door but didn't move aside. Lauren held a paper shopping bag. "I brought lunch." "For how many?" "I didn't know Gary and Wanda were here." "They're here." Lauren looked past her mother. "Can we talk alone?" "No." "Mom, you can come in and talk. They're staying." Lauren entered with the bag. She had brought 2 salads and a bottle of unsweetened tea. Wanda found plates. Gary took his sandwich from the small refrigerator and ate at his bench. Lauren placed a salad in front of Cheryl. "You need better food than whatever you're making on that hot plate." "Thank you. I mean it. I know." For several minutes they ate without discussing the building. Lauren asked whether Cheryl had taken her medication. Cheryl answered. She asked about the follow-up appointment. Cheryl gave her the date. This was how Lauren cared when care could be completed in tasks. Then she put down her fork. "Nathan sent me the access report. He sent me a request. He says you're operating the basement. Gary is finishing a repair. He says you're claiming the rear loading area. I'm using the only entrance." Lauren rubbed her forehead. "You're making the property look divided. The services are divided. That doesn't mean the building is." Cheryl removed the index card from its envelope and placed it on the table. Lauren read it. Her eyes stopped at Cheryl's name, then moved to the date. "Where did this come from?" "Behind the service board. Dad wrote this." "You know his handwriting." Lauren read it again. She didn't dismiss it immediately. That was the useful part. Then she pushed it back. "He probably meant you handled vendor access." "Maybe. So this changes nothing. It changes what we know. The lower feed wasn't an accident." Lauren stood. "Nathan wants the utility appointment by Friday. So do I. He wants to arrange it? No. Why? Because he wants the option to disconnect it. He needs a safe work site. So do I." Lauren picked up her handbag. "If you won't cooperate, he'll deal with the utility himself. He doesn't have the full meter information. He owns an address served by it, part of an address." Lauren looked at the application describing the lower commercial area. She had noticed those words too. "I'll tell him you found this," she said. Cheryl hadn't planned to show Nathan yet. By showing Lauren, she had exposed the clue to him. "Tell him exactly what it says," Cheryl replied. "I will, and tell him the service stays on until we know who controls it." Lauren left without taking the second salad. By evening, Nathan had sent a new message. He acknowledged that the basement feed appeared separate. He also stated that the lower access, live service, and active workshop now affected his construction plan. He wanted a joint meeting at the property before Friday. Cheryl placed Donald's card beside the message. The small truth she had recovered had protected the lights for the moment. It had also shown Nathan that the basement could interfere with everything he intended to build above it. The joint meeting took place Thursday morning around the folding table. Nathan brought revised plans. Lauren brought the unsigned quitclaim. Cheryl brought Donald's card, the utility application, her payment records, and a fresh page in her notebook. Gary stayed near the panel. Wanda sat beside Cheryl with the pharmacy bag in plain view. Nathan spread out the drawings. "I moved the stairwell work away from the lower conduit. That costs me some storage upstairs, but it keeps our crews clear for now." "For now?" Cheryl asked. "Until the service is identified." Lauren slid the quitclaim across the table. This would settle access. Cheryl left it where it was. Nathan pointed to the rear of his plan. The larger problem is delivery. The upper loading door is too high for the route my architect designed. We expected to use this lower entrance. Based on what? The information Lauren provided during the sale. Lauren sat straighter. I said the basement was being cleared. You said full rear access would be available. I believed it would. Nathan looked at Cheryl. That door matters to the project. It matters to Gary, too. It also matters to emergency access, deliveries, and construction staging. Then it matters enough to identify properly. Lauren touched the quitclaim with one finger. Mom, you could sign this and still use the caretaker room temporarily. Nathan has said he won't put you out during recovery. Nathan didn't confirm that. He didn't deny it either. Cheryl picked up the paper and read a paragraph she had already read several times. This gives him any interest I might have, not temporary use. We don't know that you have an interest. That's why I'm not giving it away. Nathan rolled one pencil between his palms. I'm willing to cover the cleanup Nathan's contractor estimated. You mean the $18,000? If you sign and clear the lower level, Lauren said. That isn't an offer to me. It's an offer to remove a problem for you. It's money you won't have to spend, Nathan interrupted before Lauren could continue. The lower level needs more than cleanup. My contractor only priced removal and basic drying. If you intend to keep using it, you need a real scope. I'm getting one. That afternoon, Cheryl walked through the basement with the electrician and a drainage contractor. They marked damaged conduit, tested the panel, measured the wet section of wall, and examined the rear drain. Gary showed them which circuits had carried the old freezer bank. Cheryl showed them where water collected during heavy rain. She knew the building well enough to answer most questions. The questions she couldn't answer were written down. The final estimate arrived the next morning. Electrical replacement, drainage, wall sealing, ventilation, plumbing, and safe restoration of the caretaker room came to $74,000. The urgent phase alone required a deposit large enough to consume most of the money Cheryl had set aside for the next several months. She sat at Wanda's kitchen table with the estimate open between them. You can't pay that, Wanda said. I can't pay all of it now. You shouldn't pay any of it until you know what this place is. I know it's wet. I know the panel is damaged. Waiting doesn't improve either one. You're spending your recovery on a building Lauren says she sold. She sold upstairs. You don't know what that leaves you. No? Wanda pushed the paper back. Then come home with me until you do. Cheryl looked around the kitchen. Fabric samples filled 2 baskets beside the refrigerator. Wanda's appointment card was held to the freezer by a magnet shaped like an apple. Cheryl's medication schedule had been copied onto a second paper bag and taped beside it. Wanda had made room for her. She hadn't made a different life. If I leave the basement empty, Cheryl said, Nathan gets what he expected. Gary loses his bench. The service gets shut off because nobody's using it. By the time we learn anything, there may be nothing left to protect. And if you stay, you could make yourself sick. I could. Wanda's eyes filled, though she looked angry rather than sad. Donald should have explained this. Yes. He thought leaving things arranged was the same as talking. Yes. And you let him. Cheryl looked down at the estimate. That was the part she had avoided. Donald made decisions about the building because she trusted his judgment. She handled money because he trusted hers. They worked side by side so long that each mistook familiarity for knowledge. I let him, she said. Wanda stood and carried both coffee cups to the sink. Then don't make the same mistake by deciding everything alone now. Cheryl attended her follow-up appointment that afternoon. She didn't tell the doctor the basement story. She described the stairs, the damp air, the work, and the ache that came after too much standing. The doctor listened to her heart, examined the healing incision, and asked how many hours she was active each day. Cheryl gave an honest answer. He reduced it. No lifting, no pulling shelves, no repeated stairs. 2 rest periods each day, whether she felt tired or not. If the pressure in her chest returned, she was to stop and call. Cheryl left with a printed page of restrictions, and a sense that her body had joined the negotiations. Wanda read the page in the parking lot. This goes on the basement wall. It goes in my bag. The wall. They compromised by taping it inside the caretaker cabinet. Cheryl paid the urgent repair deposit on Monday. The money left her account with one tap of her finger. Gary saw the confirmation screen before she closed it. That's a lot, he said. It's the first phase. I can increase the rent. Not until your bench earns it. It just did. He showed her the restaurant cooler he had finished. The compressor ran smoothly. The restaurant had already paid him, and another repair was waiting near the rear door. The owner asked if the old market still sells lunch, Gary said. No. He said his kitchen staff keep walking 3 blocks for sandwiches while their cooler is down. Cheryl looked at the empty freezer wall. One upright refrigerator remained from the market. Lauren had left it because the door seal failed and the bottom hinge dragged. Gary could repair it with parts he already had. How long? Cheryl asked. For the refrigerator? A day? How much power? Less than the vacuum pump. But we can't run both on the same circuit. Could we alternate? Yes. That was not a business plan. It was enough to make Cheryl take out her notebook. She called the prepared food supplier the market had used before Lauren changed vendors. The account was closed, but the woman who answered remembered Cheryl. She could deliver sealed sandwiches, salads, fruit cups, and bottled drinks in a small order if Cheryl paid on delivery. What address? The woman asked. The rear entrance at 214 West Minor. Same store? Lower level. There was a pause. What name should I put on the invoice? Cheryl looked at Gary's repaired refrigerator. Cheryl Holt. The first delivery arrived Wednesday morning in 6 plastic crates. Gary had repaired the hinge and installed a new seal. The electrical work had begun, leaving one dedicated outlet available for the refrigerator and one for his bench. They couldn't operate both heavy loads together until the new panel was installed. Gary taped a schedule beside the breakers. His pump ran early. The refrigerator came on before the food arrived. Cheryl arranged the sealed sandwiches by type, turkey and cheese on one shelf, chicken salad on another. The fruit cups went at eye level. Wanda brought a tin cash box and a stack of paper napkins. You kept this? Cheryl asked. It was from the church sale. You said they replaced it. They did. This one still locks. Cheryl set the cash box on the folding table. She wrote prices on a piece of cardboard and placed it beside the refrigerator. The first customer was one of Nathan's workers. He stopped at the basement door and looked uncertain. Are you selling these? Yes. Can I come in? Yes. Wipe your boots. He bought 2 turkey sandwiches, a fruit cup, and a drink. He paid in cash and returned 20 minutes later with 3 other workers. By noon, half the refrigerator was empty. Cheryl sat when she needed to. Wanda handled the cash while Gary ran his pump. When the refrigerator had to be switched off, they kept the door closed and watched the temperature gauge. It was awkward, limited, and temporary. It also worked. Nathan came down shortly after 1. He stopped at the door. The sign now read, Food and Repair Pickup. A second line gave the hours. His workers stood near the folding table eating lunch. You opened a store, he said. I stocked a refrigerator. On a construction site. On the lower level. Your site is upstairs. You have dust, active repairs, and no marked customer route. That's why everyone uses the rear door I need. Cheryl closed the cash box. Then we both understand its value. Nathan looked around with new attention. He had seen damp walls and old shelving. Now he saw workers entering directly from the alley, buying food, and leaving without crossing the upper unit. Gary's repaired cooler waited beside the bench for collection. This complicates my insurance, he said. Send the concern in writing. You're going to need permits. I'm checking what's required. You're investing before you know your position. So are you. His mouth tightened, but he didn't answer. Lauren arrived while he was still there. She looked at the customers, the price sign, and the nearly empty refrigerator. What is this? She asked. Lunch, one worker said. Nathan told his crew to finish outside. Lauren waited until they left. You can't reopen the market down here. I haven't. That sign says food. It says what's inside. Dad left me the business name. I'm using my own. Lauren looked at the invoice clipped beside the cash box. Cheryl's name appeared at the top. You ordered stock? I paid for it too. You're supposed to be recovering. I am. This isn't recovery. Cheryl wanted to tell her that standing behind a folding table had felt more like herself than 6 weeks of being asked whether she had taken a pill. Instead, she sat down because the doctor had told her to. I'm not trying to stay here until I find another room, she said. Lauren stared at her. Cheryl had only understood that herself during the first lunch rush. The lower level can work, she continued. Gary has customers. People need food. The rear door is useful. The service was kept separate for a reason. You don't know the reason. No. But finding out isn't my whole objective anymore. What is? Keeping this place operating long enough to deserve an answer. Nathan gathered his plans. If that's your position, we need formal boundaries. Access, utilities, insurance, all of it. Put them in writing. He nodded. This time, the words weren't a dismissal. They were an acknowledgement that Cheryl wasn't passing through. After he and Lauren went upstairs, Cheryl counted the cash. The sales covered the food order and left a small amount over. She used part of it to order more sandwiches for Friday. Then she added Gary's next repair pickup to the schedule beside the panel, making space for both businesses on the only circuit they could safely share. Gary looked at the handwritten times and moved his next compressor test to 3 in the afternoon. "The refrigerator can run all morning," he said. "I'll take the bench after lunch. And if you get an urgent job, I use the small tools only." Cheryl copied the schedule into a clean ledger. Food sales went on the left. Repair space payments went on the right. Electrical costs received their own page. Though she disliked the total already forming at the bottom, she no longer entered anything under Holt Family Market. That account belonged to the upstairs business Lauren had closed. At the top of the new ledger, Cheryl wrote lower-level operations. Gary read it upside down. Catchy. It's accurate. Also sounds like a place that sells mops. Then think of a better name while you work. Cheryl spent Friday morning making calls. She arranged commercial coverage for the lower space, subject to the electrical repairs and an inspection. She confirmed what she could sell without a working kitchen. Sealed sandwiches, packaged salads, bottled drinks, fruit cups, and shelf-stable goods were allowed once the refrigerator held temperature, and the hand-washing sink passed inspection. No hot meals, no food prepared in the caretaker room, no open containers. She wrote each restriction on a page and taped it beside the refrigerator. Wanda read the list. "You could have ignored half of that, and nobody would know. I would know. You've always been inconvenient that way." It kept Donald out of trouble. Some trouble. Cheryl looked at her. Wanda lifted both hands. "I said some." The urgent electrical work began that afternoon. The damaged breakers came out first. New conduit replaced the corroded section near the rear wall. The electrician installed a temporary protected circuit for the refrigerator and another for Gary's bench. For the first time, they could run both safely. Gary tested the refrigerator while his vacuum pump operated. The temperature dropped and held. He stood between the two machines, listening. "That's a good sound," he said. "It sounds like humming." "Exactly. Bad equipment has opinions." The electrical payment hurt more when Cheryl wrote the check than it had on the estimate. She watched the pen move through the amount. That money had once meant several months without decisions. Now it meant outlets, safe wire, and a refrigerator full of food. She signed. Then she followed the doctor's instructions and sat down. Wanda had made a rest area in the caretaker room with an extra pillow and a kitchen timer. She set it for 30 minutes. "I'm not 5, Cheryl said. "No, a 5-year-old would enjoy the timer." Cheryl closed her eyes until it rang. On Monday morning, Nathan's foreman called the number on the basement sign. He needed access to inspect the pipe that had shifted the previous week. Cheryl told him to come at 10, bring one plumber, and enter through the rear door. She wrote both names in the access notebook when they arrived. Gary walked with them. They found the pipe, confirmed the direction, and left without moving anything. The whole visit took 18 minutes. An hour later, Nathan called. "My foreman says the access process worked." It did. He also says you made him sign in. I wrote his name down. He called it signing in. He printed carefully. Nathan let out a short sound that might have been laughter. "I'm sending you a proposed construction access agreement," he said. "It won't address ownership. It only covers notice, safety, and shared systems. I'll read it. I need a quick answer. You'll get a careful one." The agreement arrived by email. Cheryl printed it at Wanda's house because the basement had no printer. She crossed out the paragraph, allowing unrestricted emergency entry. In its place, she wrote that immediate access was allowed for an active fire, flood, or electrical danger. All planned work required 1 day's notice. She also added that no lower-level utility could be changed or disconnected without written notice and proof of authority over that service. Wanda watched her make the changes. "You think he'll accept that?" "He'll accept what helps his project. And the rest? He'll tell me no." Nathan accepted most of it. He changed 1 day's notice to the shortest practical notice for safety work. Cheryl agreed after adding that she or Gary must be present unless delay risked damage. They both signed. It did not settle who owned the lower level. It settled how Nathan's workers entered it. The next day, the agreement mattered. A worker upstairs found an old copper line beneath the former deli floor and assumed it was abandoned. Before cutting it, the foreman called Cheryl. Gary traced the line through the basement ceiling. It supplied the service sink near his bench. They marked it and kept it intact. Nathan came downstairs afterward. "That call saved me a plumbing repair," he said. "It saved my sink. Both can be true." He looked at the access notebook, then at the new electrical circuits. "You moved quickly. I had to. The new wiring makes the service easier to isolate." Cheryl closed the notebook. "It also makes it safe." I didn't say otherwise, but she understood what he had noticed. Everything below still depended on the separate feed. The refrigerator, Gary's bench, the lights, and the caretaker room all came back to that one service. If Nathan couldn't gain access through paperwork, he would focus on the meter. Cheryl didn't ask him what he planned. She sent him a copy of the utility restriction they had both signed. That afternoon, she placed a larger food order. The nearby insurance office asked for 6 sandwiches delivered at noon. A roofing crew working 2 streets away wanted drinks and salads. Gary offered to carry the orders, but his repaired cooler was being collected. Wanda loaded the food into 2 insulated bags and used a folding cart. "You're sure about this?" Cheryl asked. "I walked you around a hospital corridor for 6 weeks. I can cross Minor Street with sandwiches." The orders were delivered on time. By the end of the day, the refrigerator held only 3 salads and 4 bottles of water. Cheryl counted the cash, matched it to the handwritten sales slips, and deposited enough to cover the next order. The money did not touch the repair costs. It proved the counter could replace its own stock. Gary came in carrying a flat wooden board. "What's that?" "Your name problem." He set the board on the folding table. He had painted 2 lines in dark green letters. Cheryl's Pantry, Gary's repair counter. The paint wasn't perfect. The word pantry leaned slightly upward. "You made my name bigger," Cheryl said. "You sell sandwiches. I fix machines. Sandwiches are easier to spell from the alley." Wanda held the board against the wall beside the door. "It needs to be higher." "Not too high," Cheryl said. "People have to read it." Gary mounted it above eye level. They stood back. Cheryl had not expected the sight of her own name to affect her. It was only painted wood. Still, she reached up and wiped a faint pencil mark from the corner. Lauren saw the sign the next morning. She remained at the bottom of the steps, reading it before she knocked. Cheryl opened the door. "You named it," Lauren said. "Gary did the lettering." "That isn't what I mean." Cheryl let her in. Lauren carried a stack of mail bound with a rubber band. "These came to my house. They included insurance documents, a supplier invoice, and Cheryl's electrical receipt." Lauren must have looked at the return addresses, though none of the envelopes had been opened. "You're having business mail sent here? I changed the address yesterday. To the basement, to the rear unit. It isn't called that. The utility application calls it the lower commercial area." Lauren placed the mail on the table. "Nathan says you made him sign an access agreement. He proposed it. He says it doesn't affect the sale. It says that on the first page. Then, what are you trying to establish? A way to work without somebody walking in and shutting us down." Lauren looked at the pantry refrigerator, the cash box, and the repair tickets clipped beside Gary's bench. "This isn't temporary anymore." "No." The answer left Lauren without the argument she had prepared. She moved toward the caretaker room. "Are you really sleeping back there?" "Some nights. Other nights I stay with Wanda. You could stay with me. In your office? I could move things. For how long?" Lauren opened her mouth, then stopped. The same question had not improved with time. "I don't understand why you'd rather be here," she said. Cheryl had once believed the right explanation would bring Lauren back to the version of family they had before Donald died. That version had depended on Cheryl being useful, quiet, and available. Explaining more would only ask Lauren to approve the change. "I'm not asking you to understand it," Cheryl said. Lauren's expression hardened. "You're choosing a basement over your daughter." "No, I'm making a decision about where I live and work. That affects me. Then we can discuss the effect. You don't get to turn it into permission." Lauren picked up her handbag. "Nathan is contacting the utility." "What for?" "To identify the meter and arrange whatever his project needs. He agreed to written notice. He'll give it." Lauren walked to the door, then turned back toward the sign. "If you keep making this look permanent, he's going to treat it as an obstacle. It is permanent enough to require facts." After she left, Cheryl read the mail and filed each item in the new ledger. Later that day, Nathan stood in the alley with his plans open against the hood of his truck. He measured the distance between the old meter, the basement door, and the upper loading platform. He didn't come inside. Gary watched from the doorway. He's found his target. Cheryl looked at the cloudy meter glass, then at the lights behind her. Then we make sure he can't touch it quietly, she said. She photographed both meter boxes, the basement entrance and the new sign. Then she sent Nathan a written reminder that Cheryl's pantry and Gary's repair counter depended on uninterrupted service and that she expected to be present for any utility visit. Nathan answered the message the next morning. He thanked Cheryl for the photographs. Then he attached a notice from Sutton Development, stating that the old meter interfered with planned work along the rear wall. A utility visit had been requested for the following Tuesday at 9 in the morning. The purpose was listed as identification and possible disconnection. Cheryl printed the notice and carried it to Gary. Possible means they haven't decided, he said. Possible means they want the option. Can he order it disconnected? If it belongs to his unit, and if it doesn't? That's what Tuesday is for. Gary looked toward the bench schedule. He had 2 repairs due before then, and another promised for Thursday. The refrigerator held enough food for the next day's orders. We work until we know otherwise, he said. Only if the insurance is active, Cheryl called to confirm. The company had not completed the lower space coverage. Nathan's office had answered a routine property inquiry by stating that Cheryl's legal right to occupy and operate the lower level was disputed. Nothing Nathan reported was false. That made the result harder to argue with. The insurance representative explained that coverage could not begin until Cheryl supplied proof that she had the right to use the space. A lease, deed, or written permission from the recognized property owner would work. I don't have a lease, Cheryl said. Then we would need ownership documentation. What if the service is in my name? That may support the address, but it wouldn't prove ownership by itself. Cheryl wrote that down. Can you keep the application open? For 30 days, and until coverage begins? You shouldn't operate. The word shouldn't was gentle. The risk behind it wasn't. Cheryl ended the call and unplugged the cash drawer charger. Gary watched her. What did they say? No coverage until I prove I have the right to be here. You have access. They want more than a key. What about my insurance? Call them. His answer came 20 minutes later. His existing policy covered field repairs and equipment in transit. It did not cover customers entering a disputed work location. If he continued using the bench, he would be personally responsible for any damage connected to the space. Gary put down the phone. I can work with the door locked, he said. And if the panel fails, it was inspected. If a customer comes for pickup, I meet them outside. If one of Nathan's workers trips over your cord, they're not supposed to enter without notice. Cheryl shook her head. We close until this is resolved. I've got work due. Take what you can to the storage unit. I didn't rent one. Then use my folding table at Wanda's. Wanda, who had been counting fruit cups, looked at the size of the compressor on Gary's bench. My table won't hold that. I'll find somewhere, Gary said. Cheryl opened the receipt book and wrote a refund for the unused portion of his monthly payment. He pushed it back. No, you can't use the space. I'm not taking rent back because Nathan answered a phone call. It's not punishment, then keep it. I charged you for safe commercial space. Today I can't provide that. Gary looked at the refund, then at her. All right, he said, but I'm leaving the benches. I didn't ask you to move them. You don't have to. They closed the repair counter first. Gary carried 2 smaller jobs to his truck. The restaurant cooler waiting near the door was too large to move without help, so he called the customer and explained the delay. His voice remained calm. After the call, he removed the repair ticket from the board. They'll take it somewhere else, he said. I'm sorry. So am I. He folded the refund and put it in his wallet. Cheryl called the offices expecting lunch orders. She canceled 6 sandwich deliveries and returned 2 advance payments. One office agreed to take the sealed food already ordered, but the rest remained in the refrigerator. We can give it away before it expires, Wanda said. That doesn't cover the invoice. No, it keeps it from becoming trash. They packed the sandwiches and salads into insulated bags. Wanda took 1 bag to the roofing crew. Gary carried another to the restaurant staff, whose cooler he hadn't been able to finish. Cheryl kept 4 sandwiches for the people working upstairs. She placed them on the bottom step with a note that said, "Food paid for. Take one." By noon, the refrigerator was empty. The handwritten price sign came down. Cheryl turned the painted board around so the blank wood faced the alley. The lights stayed on. The room still belonged to nobody they could name. Lauren arrived shortly after 3. She saw the blank sign first. "You closed?" "Temporarily. Nathan told me about the insurance." "Did he tell you before he responded to them?" "No." "Did you give him my insurer's information?" Lauren set her handbag on the folding table. "The company contacted him because he owns the property. He owns upstairs. That distinction is what everybody is arguing about. He could have told me they called. He answered their questions. So did I." Lauren looked at the empty refrigerator. "I'm sorry you lost the food. I didn't lose it. We gave it away. That's not what I meant." Cheryl sat down. Her chest had begun to ache after carrying one crate farther than the doctor allowed. She waited for the discomfort to ease. Lauren noticed. "Are you having pain?" "It's passing." "Should I call Wanda? She's across the street." "You shouldn't be down here. Don't use my health to finish a property argument." "I'm not. You do it whenever the other reason isn't working." Lauren pulled out the other chair. "I spent 6 weeks trying to keep you alive." "I know. I called the nurses. I picked up medication. I arranged for Wanda to take you. I know that too. And you talk as if I put you in the street. You packed my things and expected me to live wherever somebody made room. I thought you'd stay with family. I thought I had a place in the family store." Lauren looked toward the ceiling. The store was failing. "This isn't about whether you should have kept it open. You owned upstairs. You sold upstairs. The problem is that you decided everything below would go with it. I believed it did. You believed I would sign." Lauren's face changed. There was the answer. Cheryl leaned back slowly. "You told Nathan access would be resolved because you expected my signature. I expected you to be reasonable. You expected me to protect the sale after you completed it without me. The sale paid the store's debts and ended a business that was draining us." "Us?" "Me. Fine. It was draining me." Cheryl let the correction stand. Lauren pressed both hands against the edge of the table. "If Nathan can't use the rear route, he has to redesign. If the live service delays demolition, he adds costs. He says those costs come back to me because I represented the lower area as available. Did he put that in writing?" "Yes." "Did you read it before you signed?" Lauren stood. "Don't talk to me like I'm one of your overdue vendors. I'm asking because the answer matters. I read it, and you still signed. I thought the basement was an $18,000 burden you'd be glad to release. You didn't ask. I was afraid you'd refuse because Dad worked down here." It was the first time Lauren admitted she had anticipated resistance. Not understood it, not respected it, but anticipated it. "You knew it mattered to me," Cheryl said. "I knew you were attached to it. That's not the same thing." "No, it isn't." Lauren sat again. Her anger had thinned into exhaustion. "If you sign now, Nathan will deal with the repairs and the utility. You can stay with me while we turn the office into a bedroom. For how long? As long as you need. That isn't a number. Why does everything have to be exact with you? Because as long as you need usually means until needing becomes inconvenient." Lauren looked down at her hands. Cheryl wanted to reach across the table. She wanted her daughter to stop looking like someone left outside her own family. That old impulse came quickly. Smooth the numbers, cover the shortage, sign the paper, let Lauren feel safe. Then Gary's blank repair board caught her eye. Helping Lauren this time would require Cheryl to give away the only place where her own future had started to take shape. It would also remove Gary, because his work was inconvenient to a promise he had never heard. "I won't sign the quitclaim," Cheryl said. Lauren stood so quickly that the chair scraped the floor. "Then you're choosing this fight. I'm choosing verification. You know what this could cost me. I know what signing cost me." Lauren picked up her handbag. "If the utility says the meter belongs to the upper unit, will you stop?" Cheryl considered the question. If the old service had merely remained active through an accounting mistake, Donald's note would not turn it into ownership. Her payments would not make the rear door hers. Wanting the basement to work wouldn't give her the right to keep it. "Yes," she said. "If the records show Nathan controls the service and the lower level, I'll stop claiming otherwise." Lauren studied her face. "You mean that?" "Yes." "Then sign something saying it." "No. I'll let the records speak before I sign away what they may contain." Lauren left without another word. Wanda returned a few minutes later, carrying the empty insulated bag. Cheryl told her about the promise. You didn't have to say you'd leave, Wanda said. If it isn't mine to keep, staying becomes another kind of taking. And if it is, then nobody disconnects it because Lauren made a promise she couldn't make. Cheryl called Nathan. She confirmed that she would attend Tuesday's utility visit. She agreed to identification, inspection, and whatever testing the technician needed. She did not agree to disconnection. Nathan accepted the distinction, though he warned that safety might require the service to be shut off temporarily. Then the technician can explain that in front of all of us, Cheryl said. She asked him to bring the upper unit plans. She asked Lauren to bring the sale documents describing access. Cheryl would bring Donald's card, the lower service application, and the bank records. After the call, she paid the next electrical installment. It was non-refundable once the replacement parts were ordered. Wanda watched the confirmation appear on the screen. You're paying even though you may have to leave. I'm paying so the service survives long enough to be identified safely. That evening, Cheryl covered the cash box and removed the food invoices from the wall. Gary's benches stayed dark. She left the refrigerator plugged in and placed a thermometer inside the empty cabinet. Before locking the door, she turned the sign around again. The painted names faced the alley, though neither counter was open. Then she wrote Tuesday, 9 in the morning, in her notebook, and accepted that the meter could either secure the work below or end it. At 8:40 the next morning, Gary switched off every lower breaker except the caretaker light. He had placed a portable compressor near the panel and plugged it into the safe bench circuit. The refrigerator stood empty but cold. Cheryl put the access notebook, Donald's card, and the old application on the folding table. Wanda arrived carrying coffee and a ruler. "What's the ruler for?" Cheryl asked. "I don't know yet. Then why bring it? Men with plans respect rulers." Cheryl smiled and took the coffee. Lauren arrived at 8:52. She carried a thick folder and avoided looking at the painted sign. Nathan came 2 minutes later with the upper unit plans and a copy of the access agreement. He had no crew with him. The drilling upstairs remained quiet. Lauren placed the folder on the table. "These are the sale papers." "All of them?" Cheryl asked. "The parts about the building." Cheryl opened to the marked page. Lauren had represented that the upper retail unit was being transferred with its fixtures, street entrance, upper loading access, and systems serving that unit. Another paragraph said the seller would obtain any necessary releases for lower storage access and utility work before renovation. It did not say Lauren owned the basement. It did say she had promised to make it available. Nathan stood across from Cheryl. "That language is why I expected access." "It says she would obtain releases," Cheryl said. "It doesn't say she already had them." "I know what it says. Did you know when you bought upstairs?" "I knew the quitclaim wasn't signed. Lauren said it was a family formality." Lauren looked toward the caretaker room. Cheryl closed the folder. "It wasn't." Nathan nodded. "I understand that now." Lauren's hand tightened around the strap of her handbag. She had hoped the sale papers would make her promise look smaller. Instead, they showed exactly where she had placed Cheryl inside the transaction. Not as an owner, tenant, or person to consult, as a signature expected later. Nathan pulled a single printed page from his plans. "My position is simple. If the old meter serves my unit, I need control of it during renovation. If it serves only the lower level, I need to know who is responsible for it. I can't carry an unidentified live service beside active construction." "That's reasonable," Cheryl said. Lauren looked at her in surprise. Cheryl continued. "Disconnecting it before identification isn't." "I agreed to the visit," Nathan said. "You requested possible disconnection. Because the utility may require it. Then they can explain why." Nathan accepted that without argument. Lauren opened the folder again. "If the meter turns out to be part of the upper system, we're done here." "We'll know more," Cheryl said. "You promised you'd stop." "I promised I'd stop claiming control if the records show Nathan has it. That means leaving. It may." Wanda put the ruler beside the coffee cups. She heard herself when she said it. Lauren gave her a tired look. "This is between my mother and me." "No," Gary said. "Not anymore." He didn't raise his voice. He stood beside a bench that could not operate without the meter outside. His repair tickets had been removed. The empty clips remained on the board. Lauren looked away first. At 9, a utility truck stopped in the alley. The technician came down the concrete steps carrying a handheld scanner and a small testing case. He checked the work order before touching anything. "Nathan Sutton requested service identification," he said. "That's right," Nathan answered. The technician looked at Cheryl. And you're listed as the occupant of the lower area on the request? I'm the person using it. Are you requesting a change today? No, Nathan said. I'm requesting disconnection if the old meter feeds the construction area. The technician read the order again. I can identify the feed and account status. I can't disconnect an active service solely because another customer at the same street address requests it. What would you need? Nathan asked. Authorization from the customer of record, a safety condition requiring immediate shutoff, or documentation that the service belongs to your unit. Nathan pointed toward the exposed conduit. My contractor is working beside it. That may require protection or a temporary hold on nearby work. It doesn't determine who controls the meter. The rule did not give Cheryl the basement. It only required the utility to establish whose service it was before acting. Nathan understood the distinction. He stepped back. The technician inspected the new conduit and the lower panel. He read the electrician's inspection tag, then asked Gary to turn off the remaining breaker. The caretaker light went dark. Outside, the technician opened the cover beneath the old meter without breaking the utility seal. He attached a testing clamp and watched the reading. No lower load at the moment, he said. He asked Nathan to turn on the upper lights. Nathan went upstairs. A row of temporary work lamps came on above them. Their glow showed through gaps around the stairwell frame. The old meter did not move. The technician examined the newer meter. Its reading increased. That one is carrying the upper unit, he said. Nathan returned to the alley. Now give the lower panel a load, the technician told Gary. Gary turned on the refrigerator. Its compressor started. The old meter began recording use. He turned the refrigerator off and started the portable compressor at the bench. Again, the old meter moved. The technician repeated the test with the caretaker circuit and rear lights. Each time, the old meter responded. The upper meter did not. He wrote the results on the work order. The services are independent, he said. The older meter feeds the lower level only. I'm not seeing any load from the retail unit. Gary let out a breath. Cheryl rested one hand against the rear wall. She had known the circuits were separate. Now the utility had matched the old meter itself to the basement, its lights, Gary's bench, and the caretaker room. One uncertainty was gone. Nathan folded his arms. Can the lower meter remain active safely? The inspected work is safe under the listed limits. The remaining damaged circuits are locked off. Your crews need clearance from the conduit. How much clearance? The technician gave him a distance. Wanda quietly slid the ruler toward Nathan. He almost smiled. Then he marked the line on his plans. Does the account identify the lower space as a separate unit? Cheryl asked. I haven't opened the customer record yet. What did you test? The physical service. What happens next? I scanned the meter tag. That brings up the service record, account holder, and service description. Lauren moved closer to the table. Will you tell us the name? If the customer is present and can verify identity, I can confirm the active account. Otherwise, I can only state whether the person requesting a change is authorized. Cheryl had her driver's license ready. Nathan looked at it in her hand. Before he scans, he said, we should be clear about what this does and doesn't prove. Cheryl waited. A utility account proves responsibility for service. It doesn't prove title. I understand. If it's in your name, we still have to examine the property records. I understand that too. Lauren looked at Nathan. And if it's in the store name, then we determine which unit owns the service. Cheryl turned to Lauren. That isn't the same as you controlling it. You said you'd stop if it belongs upstairs. Yes, and if it doesn't, then I keep going. Lauren lowered her voice. Nathan could use these papers against me. He already has them. You have the original emails. You know I told him the basement would be released. Cheryl did have them. Lauren had sent copies while asking for the quitclaim. One message called the signature routine. Another said Cheryl had no practical use for the lower level. Nathan had not seen all of those words. If you give him everything, he could say I misrepresented the sale, Lauren said. Nathan heard her. He did not interrupt. You represented something you hadn't confirmed, Cheryl said. I know that now. What do you want me to do? Tell him this was a family misunderstanding. It was your assumption. Mom? Cheryl looked at the sale folder. She could make Lauren's position worse with one email. She could hand Nathan a clean record showing that Lauren had expected Cheryl to sign after the sale. That might move his pressure away from the basement and toward Lauren. It would also use the truth as a weapon before it was needed. Cheryl took the printed emails from her file and returned them to the envelope. "I won't hide what happened," she said. "I won't offer it to punish you either." Lauren's face remained guarded. "What does that mean?" "It means Nathan gets what he needs to address the property. He doesn't get our private messages unless they become necessary." Nathan nodded once. "That's acceptable for today." Lauren stared at her mother. "Why would you protect me if you think I did this to you?" "I'm not protecting you from the result. I'm refusing to enlarge it. That sounds like the same thing." "It isn't." Cheryl had covered Lauren's mistakes in the past so completely that Lauren never had to face them. Refusing cruelty did not require returning to that pattern. "If the lower service and records lead somewhere," Cheryl said, "you will have to deal with what you promised, Nathan. I won't sign it away to keep you from that." Lauren's eyes filled. She blinked hard and looked toward the alley. There would be no return to the arrangement they had before. Even if the meter showed nothing useful, Lauren now knew that care would no longer purchase Cheryl's obedience. Cheryl knew that Lauren's concern could be real and still serve Lauren's own needs. The change between them did not feel like victory. It felt like a door that would no longer close the old way. The technician stood beside the meter, waiting. "I can postpone the scan," he said. "No service change will happen today without authorization." Nathan checked his watch but said nothing. Cheryl thought of the empty refrigerator and Gary's silent bench. Postponing would keep the question open. It would also keep everyone dependent on the same uncertainty. "No postponement," she said. She handed the technician her license. "Read the service exactly as it appears. Then give us whatever record number a title examiner will need." The technician compared Cheryl's photograph with her face. He entered her name into the handheld device, but did not submit it yet. "Once I scan the meter, the system will log this identification request," he said. "Any future change will refer back to today's result. That's what I want." Cheryl asked Lauren to stay. She asked Gary and Wanda to remain as witnesses. Nathan opened the upper unit plans on the hood of his truck, ready to mark whichever service boundary the record described. Then Cheryl stood beside the cloudy glass while the technician raised the scanner toward the old meter. A red beam crossed the cloudy glass. The scanner gave a short tone. The technician waited while the screen loaded. Nathan pointed to the basement wall on his plan. "Whatever name appears, the account could be an old billing arrangement. The lower area was used by the store. It was also used by Gary," Cheryl said, "with Donald's permission. And mine." Lauren stepped beside Nathan. "Dad left me the retail unit. The basement was storage connected to it. Mom paid bills because she kept the books." Cheryl looked at her. "Is that what you believe?" "Yes." "Then stay while we test it." The technician turned the screen so Cheryl could see. The service address appeared first. 214 West Minor Street, Lower Commercial Service. Beneath it was the customer name. Cheryl Holt. The active status dated back 12 years. The technician compared the record to Cheryl's license. "You're the customer of record," he said. "The account is current. There's no disconnection authority attached to Mr. Sutton's request." Nathan leaned closer. "Does it identify a unit?" "Lower Commercial Service, rear boundary." "What does rear boundary mean?" "It refers to the service map on file. I don't have the property map in this system." "Can you disconnect for construction safety?" "Only for an immediate hazard or with Ms. Holt's authorization. Your contractor can request temporary protection near the conduit. That's different from ending service." The technician canceled the disconnection portion of the work order. He entered the physical test results and gave Cheryl a printed service confirmation with the meter number, record reference, and original activation date. The paper did not make the basement hers. It did make the meter hers to control. Gary switched on the caretaker light. Then he started the refrigerator. The old meter recorded both loads under Cheryl's active account. Lauren stared at the printed name. "You knew you were paying it," she said. "I knew about the payment last week. You must have signed up for the account." "I don't remember doing it." Nathan studied the original date. "Donald arranged this service." Gary nodded. That's when he separated the feed. Then she underlined the meter record number, not the sentence. The technician packed the scanner. "If you need to determine why the boundary was created, take that reference to a title examiner," he said. The utility record links to the recorded service map. He was careful not to say what the property records would show. His part ended with the meter. Nathan folded his plans. "I'll hold work along the rear wall until the boundary is reviewed. And the service stays on," Cheryl said. "Yes." Lauren closed the sale folder. How long does a title review take? As long as the facts require, Cheryl said. Lauren heard her own earlier demand, returned without anger. She looked away. Deborah Goodman answered Cheryl's call that afternoon. She was 58 and worked from a quiet office 3 streets from the county recorder. Cheryl explained the separate meter, the service reference, and the 2 units mentioned in Donald's estate papers. I don't need the family history first, Deborah said. I need the current deeds, the recorded map reference, and that utility paper. Cheryl appreciated the order of things. She delivered the documents before the office closed. Deborah asked for 2 business days. She did not promise a result. During those 2 days, the pantry remained closed because the insurance company still wanted ownership proof. Gary worked only on small items he could carry to his truck. Nathan's crews continued upstairs, but stayed away from the rear conduit and stairwell wall. Lauren did not call. Wanda came each morning. She cleaned shelves, kept Cheryl to her rest schedule, and said very little about the meter. On Thursday afternoon, Deborah called. I found the map, she said. I need everyone with a property interest at the building tomorrow morning. Does that include Lauren? Yes. Nathan? He bought the upper unit, so yes. What did you find? I'd rather match it on site before I say more. At 9 Friday, Deborah arrived carrying a flat document case and a portable measuring wheel. The painted sign faced the alley. Cheryl had reopened neither counter, but the refrigerator was running and Gary's bench lights were on. Lauren entered without being asked. Nathan brought his plans and a copy of his recorded purchase deed. Deborah set the document case on the folding table. I'm here to identify the recorded units, she said. I'm not settling family disagreements. I'm matching records to the building. She unrolled a large copy of a commercial condominium map, recorded 12 years earlier. The drawing showed the street-level retail unit, upper loading access, and front entrance as Unit 1. A heavy line separated it from Unit 2 below. Unit 2 included the basement commercial floor, rear loading door, interior stairs to the caretaker room, service sink, and the utility area along the rear wall. The old meter's reference number appeared beside that boundary. Nathan placed his plans next to the recorded map. His shaded lower rectangle covered the same space, but his plan had not assigned it a unit number. Deborah pointed to the discrepancy. Your plan treats the lower area as undefined existing space. The recorded map defines it as Unit 2. Who owns Unit 2? Lauren asked. Deborah opened a second document. The current deed history shows Donald and Cheryl Holt created the 2-unit arrangement. Donald retained Unit 1. Unit 2 was deeded solely to Cheryl Holt. Cheryl remained standing. The words seemed simple enough. The room did not look different after Deborah said them. The damp wall was still damp. The folding table still tilted slightly on one leg. Deeded when? Cheryl asked. The same year the separate service was activated. Did I sign something? A deed to you doesn't require your signature as the recipient. The recorded return address was the market office. Cheryl remembered envelopes Donald opened before handing her the bills. She remembered him saying he had taken care of the building paperwork. She had never asked what that meant. Deborah showed her the legal description. Unit 2, lower commercial area, rear loading access, utility service area, and caretaker room. Is this still current? Cheryl asked. Yes, I found no later transfer from you. Nathan looked at Lauren. Your father's estate didn't include this unit. Lauren opened the estate folder. It says I inherited the retail unit. Unit 1, Deborah said. That matches the map. Lauren had sold what she inherited. She had not sold the basement. Nathan examined the lower boundary carefully. What about shared systems? The map grants limited access for repair of shared water and structural lines, Deborah said. It does not grant possession of the lower unit or general use of its rear entrance. The rear route is hers? He asked. According to this deed and map, yes. Deborah took the utility confirmation from Cheryl and placed it beside the map. The service record, meter location, and recorded boundary matched. That was the mechanism Donald had built and maintained. The meter had not created Cheryl's ownership. It had preserved the trail leading to it. Lauren sat down. Dad never told me, she said. He told you that I'd have the working half, Cheryl replied. I thought he meant the business. So did I. Wanda stood behind Cheryl. He should have used more words. No one disagreed. Deborah gave certified copies to Cheryl and a written summary to Nathan and Lauren. She explained that Nathan's deed covered Unit 1. Cheryl's covered Unit 2. Any sale, lease, utility change, or access beyond the shared system terms required the respective owner's agreement. Then she packed her measuring wheel. "My work is finished," she said. She left through the rear door. For several moments, only the refrigerator could be heard. Nathan rolled up the plan he could no longer use. "The lower entrance was central to my design," he said. "I understand," Cheryl replied. "I also need the stairwell area and utility route. You have access for shared repairs under the recorded terms. That isn't enough for the project I planned." "No?" Lauren looked at Nathan. "Can you redesign?" "Yes. At a cost." She lowered her eyes. Nathan turned to Cheryl. His manner changed, not into warmth, but into direct respect. "Would you consider selling Unit 2? "No." "You haven't heard a number." "I know." "The space needs $74,000 in repairs." "I know that too. It would take time to make it fully usable." "Yes." Nathan opened his briefcase and removed a blank purchase proposal. He wrote on it, signed, and turned it toward Cheryl. The offer was $420,000, subject to an ordinary inspection and clear transfer. It included the lower commercial unit, rear loading access, and caretaker room. Lauren read the amount and went still. Weeks earlier, she had called the basement an $18,000 cleanup liability. Nathan's written offer placed a very different value on the same damp walls. Cheryl read every line. With that money, she could buy a small house, protect her savings, and finish recovering without listening for water behind concrete. She could repay herself for the electrical work and leave Gary to find another bench. It was not a foolish offer. That was why refusing it mattered. She slid the proposal back. "No, thank you." Nathan did not increase the number. "May I ask why?" "Because I've spent years keeping useful things alive for other people. I'm keeping this one for myself." Lauren looked at the quitclaim still inside her folder. "You won't sign that either," she said. "No?" Nathan put away the rejected proposal. "Then I'll redesign around Unit 2. We'll need a permanent access agreement for shared systems. You can send one. And construction boundaries. In writing." He nodded. "Your meter stays untouched." Gary switched on the second bench light. Cheryl turned the pantry sign toward the alley. The ownership question had ended, but the cost of owning the answer had just begun. Nathan took the quitclaim from Lauren's folder and drew a line through the signature page. "I won't be needing this," he said. He wrote void across the top and handed it to Cheryl. Lauren watched him. "What happens to our agreement? We revised the access representation." Meaning I bought Unit 1. "You promised access to Unit 2 that you didn't control. I didn't know it was a separate unit. That explains it. It doesn't remove the cost." Nathan spoke without pleasure. He wasn't interested in humiliating Lauren. He was also not willing to absorb every expense created by her assumption. They agreed to meet at his office the following week to review the redesign costs. Nathan would pay for changes within the upper unit. Lauren would be responsible for the portion tied directly to the rear access she had promised. Lauren looked at Cheryl as if waiting for her to intervene. Cheryl didn't. Nathan gathered his papers. "My crew won't enter the lower unit without the notice agreement. I'll send a permanent version Monday." "What about the interior stairs?" Cheryl asked. "I'll install a rated door at the Unit 1 boundary. You'll control the door at your level. Shared line access stays as recorded. And the old meter, it's outside my unit." That was all he said. He did not apologize for trying to disconnect it. From his point of view, he had acted on the information he purchased. When the information changed, he changed his plan. It was not kindness. It was enough. After he left, Lauren remained at the folding table. Wanda began stacking coffee cups. Gary returned to his bench, giving mother and daughter privacy without leaving the room. Lauren touched the voided quitclaim. "You could ask Nathan not to charge me." "I could." "Will you?" "No, I was trying to close a failing business." "You had the right to sell upstairs. You keep saying that like it excuses nothing." "It excuses the sale. It doesn't excuse promising what wasn't yours. Dad created this mess. He created the units. We created the silence around them." Lauren shook her head. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make everything partly your fault so nobody can tell whether you're accusing them." Cheryl considered the words. Lauren wasn't entirely wrong. Cheryl had used shared blame to soften hard conversations. It allowed everyone to leave the table without changing. "I should have asked more questions while Donald was alive," Cheryl said. "That is mine." Selling before I came home, moving my things, and assuming I'd sign are yours. Lauren's face tightened. I cared for you after surgery. You did. I thought I was doing the right thing. You did some right things. Lauren stood. That's cold. It's accurate. She picked up her handbag, then set it down again. What do you want me to do? Cheryl did not answer with forgiveness. Lauren was asking for a task, because tasks were where she understood care. Bring me every market record still in your house, Cheryl said. Paper files, email copies, tax notices, utility messages. Don't sort them first. All of them? Yes. That could take days. Yes. And then what? Then you correct the statement you gave Nathan? In writing. Unit 1 was what you inherited and sold. Unit 2 was never yours to offer. Lauren sat again. That will make his claim against me easier. It will make the record true. You won't even speak for me? I'll say you believed the basement was storage. I won't say I agreed. Lauren looked toward the painted sign. And after that, we'll see. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a door left unlocked only from Cheryl's side. Lauren picked up the voided quitclaim and placed it in the sale folder. I'll bring the record Sunday. Call first. The request hurt her. Cheryl could see that. I used to have a key, Lauren said. You used it without asking. I'll call. She left by the rear door. Gary waited until her car had gone. You want the bench running? Not until the insurance starts. Cheryl sent Deborah's summary and the deed copy to the insurer. Coverage was approved that afternoon, subject to completion of the urgent electrical work and written limits on public access during upper construction. Gary updated his own policy with the correct unit description. His premium increased. Cheryl offered to reduce his monthly payment by the difference. He refused. My business costs more because it has a real address, he said. That's not your bill. You lost a customer while we were closed. I've lost customers before. Because of my building? Because machines break on schedules that don't care about mine. He clipped 2 new repair tickets to the board. What I need is a written agreement, he said, something that doesn't disappear when one of us gets sick. Cheryl understood the request. They wrote a simple month-to-month workshop agreement. It named Unit 2, described Gary's bench area, required insurance, and protected his access during stated hours. It also allowed either of them to end the arrangement with notice. Gary read every line before signing. You put your recovery schedule in here, he said. It says you handle heavy deliveries. That's not usually in a lease. It is in this one. He signed. Wanda signed as witness, then handed the pen back. What do I get, she asked. A folding table someday. I was hoping for refrigerator privileges. You can have 1 shelf. The pantry reopened Monday with a smaller order. Cheryl did not advertise beyond turning the sign toward the alley. The nearby offices returned. So did Nathan's crew, though they entered only through the rear door and stayed behind the marked customer line. Nathan's permanent access agreement arrived that morning. It recognized Cheryl's control of Unit 2, protected Gary's bench area, and limited shared system entry to necessary work. Cheryl added notice requirements and a rule that no materials could be stored against her door or meter. Nathan accepted both changes. His crew built a separate upper delivery platform along the side alley. It was less convenient than Cheryl's rear route, but it kept the units independent. The cost did not disappear. It moved to the people whose decisions created it. On Sunday, Lauren called before coming. She arrived with 8 file boxes in the back of her car. Gary carried them downstairs. Lauren made 3 trips with lighter folders, despite Cheryl telling her 1 was enough. The final box contained Donald's office papers, the market's old account files, and Cheryl's missing desk drawer. Lauren set the drawer on the folding table. I didn't know this was at my house, she said. Inside were Cheryl's address book, spare glasses, 2 rolls of stamps, and the brass key Donald had used for the market office. The key no longer opened anything upstairs. Cheryl placed it beside the adding machine. Lauren handed her a printed letter addressed to Nathan. It corrected the sale description. It stated that Lauren had inherited and sold Unit 1 only, that she had assumed access to Unit 2 could be released, and that Cheryl had never agreed to that release. You can read it before I send it, Lauren said. I'll read it, but the words have to be yours. They are. Cheryl read the letter. Lauren had not called herself dishonest. She had not blamed her mother. She had written that her assumption caused the error. It was a beginning with a cost attached. Send it, Cheryl said. Lauren used her phone to send the email while sitting at the folding table. A few minutes later, Nathan confirmed receipt and gave her the date for their cost meeting. Lauren put down the phone. I still think the market had to close. So do I. She looked up. You do? The upstairs market. Yes. Then why didn't you say that before? You didn't ask whether I agreed with the sale. You asked me to agree with everything that came after it. Lauren absorbed that quietly. Can I help here? She asked. Today? Today or another day? Cheryl looked at the boxes, the lunch counter, and Gary's active bench. Not with the books, she said. Lauren nodded. All right. And you don't get a key. Her daughter's mouth tightened, but she nodded again. The rear wall has to be cleared for drainage work next Saturday, Cheryl said. You can come at 9 if you want. What should I bring? Work gloves. Lauren arrived the following Saturday at 8:55 with gloves, old clothes, and no folder. She followed Gary's instructions for moving the empty shelving. She asked Cheryl before opening each box. When Cheryl sat for her required rest, Lauren kept working without telling her to go home. They did not discuss the sale. At noon, Lauren washed dust from her hands in the service sink. One of her palms had blistered beneath the glove. Cheryl found a bandage in the caretaker cabinet and placed it on the table. Lauren wrapped her own hand. That mattered too. By the end of the day, the rear wall was clear for the drainage crew. The work would take weeks, and the remaining repairs still totaled more than Cheryl could pay at once. She pinned the repair schedule beside the business ledger. Electrical completion came first. Drainage followed. The caretaker room would wait. Lauren read the schedule before leaving. You're really doing all of it? Gradually. You could have taken Nathan's money. Yes. Lauren touched the bandage on her palm. I don't think I would have refused it. I know. This time, neither woman treated the difference as an insult. Lauren returned the next Saturday and the one after that. She never arrived without calling. She didn't ask for a key again. Sometimes she stayed for 2 hours. Sometimes she left, after carrying one load of damaged shelving to the alley. Cheryl gave instructions without softening them into suggestions. Lauren followed them without rearranging the job. The first hard rain came before the drainage work was finished. Water struck the rear wall shortly after midnight. Cheryl woke to the sound and called Gary. Then she called Lauren, who had asked to be included if the building needed help. Lauren arrived in old shoes with towels, plastic tubs, and a flashlight. She knocked on the basement door while rain ran from her hair. Cheryl let her in. Tell me what to do, Lauren said. Gary checked the drain. The temporary channel was carrying most of the water, but one corner near the electrical chase had begun to pool. Lauren wanted to move the nearest shelf herself. She stopped and asked first. Gary showed her where to lift. Cheryl directed them from the folding chair, the doctor's restrictions taped inside the cabinet behind her. The new conduit stayed dry. The drain kept moving. By 2 a.m, the puddle had stopped growing. Lauren made tea on the hot plate. She handed Cheryl a cup without asking whether she had taken her pills. That restraint was new. You can sleep at my house, Lauren said. Just tonight? Cheryl looked at the wall. I'm staying here. All right. Lauren did not repeat the offer. She took the wet towels home to wash and brought them back folded 2 days later. Nathan's permanent boundaries were tested soon afterward. His plumber needed to reach a shared shutoff behind Gary's bench. Nathan gave written notice, proposed a time, and waited for Cheryl's answer. She approved the visit for the following morning. Nathan came with the plumber and signed the access notebook. Nothing was moved until Gary covered the repair equipment. The work took 40 minutes. Before leaving, Nathan handed Cheryl a copy of his revised plan. The upper project now used its own loading platform, its own utility route, and the door at the top of the interior stairs. His construction no longer depended on crossing Unit 2. I should have requested the property map before I designed anything, he said. Yes, Cheryl replied. That was as close as he came to apology. He completed the upstairs renovation without touching Cheryl's meter. The new occupants entered from West Minor Street. Their deliveries used the side platform. When a shared pipe needed attention, they called. Lauren paid the portion of Nathan's redesign cost assigned to her promise about rear access. She didn't tell Cheryl the amount, and Cheryl didn't ask. She brought a copy of the final agreement to the pantry. It's settled, Lauren said. Did you read it? 3 times. Good. Lauren placed it in the property file. The lower repairs continued in the order Cheryl could afford. The electrical work came first. Then the rear drainage was rebuilt. The wall was sealed from outside, the damaged plaster was removed, and ventilation was installed. The caretaker room came last. Every invoice together reached the original estimate of $74,000. Cheryl paid from her savings, pantry earnings, Gary's rent, and each month's careful margin. She didn't pretend the expense was easy. She delayed new shelving twice and kept the folding table longer than anyone expected. Nathan's offer remained in her file, unsigned. On difficult days, she looked at the amount. Then she looked at the next repair on the schedule and paid what was due. When the final electrical circuit passed inspection, Gary switched on both benches while the refrigerator and rear lights remained active. Nothing dimmed. He stood listening to the equipment. "Still humming," Cheryl said. "Better humming." He added a second repair rack and a waist-high counter for customer pickups. The painted sign was cleaned, sealed, and mounted beside the basement entrance. Cheryl's pantry expanded one shelf at a time. The sealed sandwiches remained the busiest item. Bottled coffee did well in summer. When the weather cooled, she added packaged soup from the same supplier and a small microwave approved for customer use. She hired no staff. Wanda worked the cash box on appointment mornings and accepted payment in tea and refrigerator privileges. Gary carried deliveries. Cheryl handled orders, accounts, and the daily customer list. She rested twice each day. When the timer rang, nobody argued with it, including Cheryl. Her heart grew stronger. It did not become young. She climbed stairs slowly and used the railing. Heavy cartons remained Gary's work. Damp weather sometimes left her tired before closing. Age had not taken away her competence. It had made waste less acceptable. Lauren asked to cover the pantry during one of Cheryl's follow-up appointments. Cheryl did not answer immediately. "You said I could help," Lauren said. "I said we'd see. What do you need from me? Follow the price sheet. Don't change suppliers. Don't extend credit. Don't let Nathan's workers through the interior door without notice." Lauren nodded. Cheryl gave her a temporary key attached to a wooden tag too large to lose. The tag said, "Pantry Shift." When Cheryl returned, the cash matched the sales slips. The refrigerator temperature had been recorded every hour. Lauren had written one note in the margin: "Need more turkey. Did not order." Cheryl read it twice. "You could have ordered," she said. "You told me not to change anything. Ordering the same stock isn't a change. I thought I should ask." Cheryl picked up the supplier phone. "Next time, ask. Next time, next Thursday." "I have another appointment." Lauren put the temporary key in Cheryl's hand. "I'll pick it up that morning." That was how access returned, one stated purpose at a time. It wasn't the old trust. The old trust had depended on nobody checking. This one used receipts, calls, returned keys, and the right to say no. Wanda's key remained sealed in its envelope on a hook inside her kitchen cabinet. She used it once when Cheryl left medication at the pantry after closing. Wanda called first, entered, took the bag, and locked the door behind her. The next morning, she reported every detail as if testifying. "You could have just brought the pills," Cheryl said. "I wanted credit for following procedure. You have it. Put that in writing." Gary made her a certificate on repair counter paper. Wanda framed it beside her sewing machine. The caretaker room took 6 weeks to finish. The old cot was removed. The sink was replaced. Cabinets went along one wall, and a compact kitchen occupied the raised section beyond the short interior stairs. Cheryl chose warm cream paint because the basement already had enough gray. She kept Donald's adding machine on a shelf above the table. His card about the separate feed stayed protected in the property file, not displayed as decoration. The green wool coat hung inside a real closet. On the first night after the work was complete, Cheryl carried in the canvas overnight bag she had arrived with months earlier. It still held 2 folded blouses, night clothes, and the drugstore reading glasses Wanda had found at the hospital. She put the clothes in drawers. The glasses went beside the bed. The empty bag went on the top closet shelf. For the first time since surgery, she wasn't staying until someone needed the room back. Lauren came for supper the following Sunday. She brought bread and asked before putting it in a cabinet. Wanda brought soup. Gary closed the repair counter early and carried up 4 chairs. They ate at Cheryl's small kitchen table. Nobody discussed the sale. Lauren asked about the next drainage payment. Gary described a refrigerator that had made a noise like loose coins. Wanda complained that Cheryl's new kettle poured badly. Ordinary complaints filled the room that had once held boxes marked for storage. When Lauren left, she paused near the lower door. "Do you want me Thursday?" she asked. 8:30. I'll call when I'm outside. Good. She did. Spring returned with dry sidewalks and longer afternoons. The pantry stayed open 5 days a week. Gary's repair counter kept separate hours, though his light often remained on after Cheryl finished selling food. The meter outside kept recording the work below. Each bill arrived in Cheryl's name at the lower commercial service. She checked every charge before paying it. If stories about reclaiming dignity after family abandonment matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. One evening, the last customer bought chicken salad, crackers, and 2 bottles of water. Cheryl counted the change into his hand and waited while he climbed the concrete steps. Gary was replacing a thermostat at his rear bench. His pencil rested behind one ear. The small radio beside him played quietly beneath the sound of tools. Cheryl recorded the sale, balanced the cash box, and checked the refrigerator temperature. She turned the painted sign toward the wall. Outside, the upper storefront lights came on behind clean glass. Their circuit did not touch hers. Lauren had returned the pantry key that afternoon after another careful shift. Wanda's sealed key remained at her house. Cheryl's own ring rested in her palm, holding the lower door key, the caretaker key, and the brass office key that no longer opened anything but still belonged to her. She locked the rear entrance and tested it once. The pantry settled into evening quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Warm light showed above the short stairs. At dusk, Cheryl closed the pantry door, left Gary's repair light glowing, and climbed the interior stairs to her own warm kitchen.